The fluorescent lights in the emergency room made everything look sickly green, including the angry red burn spreading across my forearm like a twisted map of pain. The nurse documenting my injury kept glancing between the wound and my face, probably wondering why I wasn't crying. An hour ago, my sister Bethany had pressed a scorching hot iron against my skin during another one of her fits about borrowed clothes. When I screamed for help, our mother Margaret laughed from the doorway, her voice dripping with contempt as she said those words that would change everything. That's what trash gets for existing. Our father Thomas hadn't even looked up from his newspaper when he added, "If I were her, I'd have burned your face too." I didn't cry then. I won't cry now. I have other plans entirely. Growing up in the Morrison household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy from day one. My sister Bethany, 2 years my senior, had been coronated as the family princess before she could even walk properly. Every wall in our house told her story through perfectly framed photographs. Bethany at her dance recitals, Bethany holding her valedictorian trophy, Bethany being crowned homecoming queen Bethany on the arm of Preston Hayes, heir to the biggest construction company in our Connecticut town. I was 24 now, but the narrative of my existence had been written when I was born. Margaret never tired of telling anyone who would listen how I had ruined her figure and destroyed her career prospects. She'd been a marketing executive on the fast track before what she called her unfortunate accident. Me. Thomas backed her story with his own version of martyrdom, claiming my unexpected arrival forced him to take paternity leave that cost him a crucial promotion. "Some children are blessings," Margaret would say at family gatherings, smoothing Bethany's golden hair. "Others are just burdens we learn to carry." The irony was that I'd spent years believing them. I'd internalized every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every moment that reinforced my status as the family's unwanted afterthought. Bethany got private tutors and summer camps in Europe. I got hand-me-down textbooks and told to be grateful. She got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass and a lecture about not being entitled. I worked 3 jobs during high school just to save money for college application fees. When I got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, Thomas's only comment was that I was wasting money I didn't have. Bethany, meanwhile, had her entire Ivy League education paid for without question, including the apartment off campus and the monthly allowance that exceeded what some people made in salary. The day everything shifted started like any other. I was cleaning out the attic, assigned the task, because Bethany claimed dust allergies prevented her from helping with household chores. Behind stacks of Christmas decorations and molding cardboard boxes, I found a leather trunk I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I opened it, expecting more evidence of Bethany's perfect childhood. Instead, I found myself. There were ultrasound photos labeled Baby Number 2, Our Little Miracle. Medical records showing Margaret and Thomas had tried for 2 years to conceive after Bethany. Fertility treatment receipts, a half-finished nursery design for a room painted sunshine yellow, and then a folder marked Bethany, age 3, that changed everything I thought I knew. The medical reports were extensive. Bethany had been diagnosed with a congenital heart condition that required constant monitoring, expensive treatments, and multiple surgeries. The final document was a genetic counselor's report suggesting any future children might carry similar risks. Attached was a sticky note in Margaret's handwriting, "No more chances. Everything for Bethany now." I sat in that dusty attic for hours, pieces of my life rearranging themselves like a horrible puzzle finally making sense. I hadn't been the accident. I'd been desperately wanted, planned for, celebrated, until Bethany got sick. Then I became competition for resources, attention, and love that they decided she needed more. They rewrote history to justify their choice, painting me as the burden, rather than admitting they'd chosen to sacrifice one daughter for another. The sound of Bethany's BMW pulling into the driveway shook me from my revelation. I carefully photographed every document before returning them to the trunk. As I climbed down from the attic, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. Same brown eyes as Thomas, same stubborn chin as Margaret, but something new in my expression. Understanding, and with it the first spark of rage. "Were you snooping through my things?" Bethany's shrill voice cut through my thoughts. She stood at the bottom of the stairs, manicured hands on designer-clad hips. "The attic isn't your things," I replied calmly, though my heart raced. "Everything in this house is mine," she snapped. "You're just here on borrowed time until Mom and Dad finally kick you out. Speaking of which, did you take my Versace blazer? I have a charity luncheon tomorrow, and I know you've been eyeing it." "I don't take your clothes, Bethany. They wouldn't fit anyway." Her face flushed red. "Are you calling me fat? At least I don't have to shop at discount stores like some poverty case. No wonder nobody wants you around. You're pathetic." In the past, I would have retreated to my room, her words burrowing under my skin like splinters. But the documents in the attic had given me new armor. I walked past her without responding, which only enraged her more. "Don't you walk away from me." She grabbed my arm, her acrylic nails digging into my skin. "I'm talking to you." "Let go, Bethany. Or what, you'll cry to Mommy? Oh wait, she hates you too." I yanked my arm free and continued to my room. Behind me, I heard her storm off, probably to complain to Margaret about my disrespect. I sat on my bed, staring at the photos on my phone. The truth was worse than the lie in some ways. Being unwanted from birth was tragic, but simple. Being wanted and then discarded, that was a special kind of cruelty. 3 days later, the argument about the blazer escalated. Bethany had found it in her own closet, still with tags on, but refused to apologize for accusing me. When I pointed this out, she flew into one of her rages that the family always excuse as passion or stress from being successful. I was in the laundry room ironing my work uniforms for the week when she cornered me. The confrontation started with words. Her usual barrage of insults about my appearance, my minimum wage jobs, my community college degree, my general existence. I'd learned to tune it out to focus on the smooth glide of the iron across fabric, while she vented her perpetual rage at having to share the world with me. "You're not even listening," she shrieked, slamming her hand on the ironing board. "God, you're so disrespectful. No wonder nobody loves you." "I heard you," I said quietly, adjusting my grip on the iron. "You think I'm worthless. Message received same as yesterday and the day before." "Don't get smart with me. I could have you thrown out of this house tomorrow." "Then do it." The words surprised both of us. I set the iron upright, meeting her gaze directly. "If I'm such a burden, such trash, then throw me out. But we both know you won't. You need someone to feel superior to. Without me, you're just a 26-year-old woman still living at home, stealing from her fiancé's company to maintain a lifestyle she can't afford." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Then Bethany's face contorted with fury, and before I could react, she grabbed the iron and pressed it against my forearm. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. The smell of burning flesh filled the small room as I screamed, trying to pull away while she held the iron firmly against my skin. Through my agony, I heard footsteps and saw Margaret appear in the doorway. Relief flooded through me for a split second before she laughed. "That's what trash gets for existing," she said, leaning against the doorframe like she was watching a mildly amusing television show. Thomas's voice drifted from the living room. "If I were her, I'd have burned your face too." Bethany finally released the iron, tossing it aside carelessly. "Maybe now you'll learn your place." I cradled my burned arm against my chest, shock overriding the pain momentarily, not at Bethany's violence. She'd always been capable of cruelty, but at the casual approval from my parents, the easy acceptance that I deserved to be maimed for the crime of existing in their space. "I need to go to the hospital," I managed through gritted teeth. You can drive yourself, Margaret said, and don't even think about telling them some sob story. Accidents happen when clumsy people use appliances they can't handle. I grabbed my keys with my good hand and stumbled to my ancient Honda Civic, the one they'd grudgingly allowed me to buy with my own money when public transportation became impossible for juggling 3 jobs. As I drove one-handed to the emergency room, tears finally threatening to spill, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't cry. Not for them. Not anymore. The girl who believed she deserved their treatment had died the moment that iron touched her skin. What remained was someone else entirely. Someone with plans. The burn treatment took 3 hours, and most of my savings. The nurse who dressed my wound kept asking if I was sure it was an accident, her eyes soft with the kind of concern I'd rarely experienced. I stuck to the story about being clumsy with the iron, hating myself for protecting them even now. The doctor prescribed pain medication I couldn't afford, and antibiotics I'd have to choose between, or groceries. Just another day in the Morrison family ecosystem. I returned home near midnight, exhausted and nauseated from pain. The house was dark except for the television's blue glow from the living room, where Thomas had likely fallen asleep in his recliner. I moved quietly through the kitchen, not wanting to trigger another confrontation when I noticed an envelope on the counter with my name on it. The return address made me freeze. Whitman, Graves and Associates, Attorneys at Law. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The last time I'd seen that letterhead was 5 years ago when grandmother Eleanor had tried to contact me. Margaret had intercepted the letter, tearing it up while lecturing me about not disturbing their peace with "that woman's poison." Eleanor was Margaret's mother, but they'd been estranged for as long as I could remember. Family photos that included her had been systematically removed from displays, leaving ghostly gaps in our visual history. I took the letter to my room, locking the door before sitting on my bed. The pain medication was making me dizzy, but I needed to know what this was about. I carefully opened the envelope, finding several documents inside. The first was a formal notice from the law firm. Eleanor Morrison had passed away 2 weeks ago. I felt a strange grief for a woman I barely remembered, just fragments of lavender perfume and soft hands from when I was very young. The second document changed everything. It was her will, and she'd left me everything. $3.2 million, her house in Vermont, her investment portfolio, every single asset down to her jewelry collection. The will was explicit in its language. To my granddaughter, Hortense Morrison, who deserves far more than the life she's been given, I leave my entire estate. To my daughter Margaret and granddaughter Bethany, I leave nothing but the truth of what they are. My vision blurred, and not from the pain medication. I read the number again. $3.2 million, more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to leave this house, finish my education, build an actual life. Enough to never have to endure another moment of their cruelty. The final item in the envelope was a sealed letter, addressed to me in shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully as if it might dissolve at my touch. "My dearest Hortense," it began. "If you're reading this, then I've failed you one final time by dying before I could save you myself. Please forgive a cowardly old woman who let fear keep her from protecting the grandchild who needed her most. I know what they've done to you. I've known for years. When you were 7, I hired a private investigator to document what was happening in that house after Margaret cut me off for suggesting she was playing favorites. What he found broke my heart. The photos of you doing chores while Bethany lounged by the pool, the recordings of the verbal abuse, the receipts showing how they spent thousands on Bethany while denying you basic needs. I tried to intervene through the courts, but Margaret convinced everyone I was a bitter old woman trying to destroy her family. The judge believed her performance, and I was issued a restraining order that prevented me from contacting you directly. But I never stopped watching from afar, never stopped collecting evidence, never stopped hoping I'd find a way to help you. The investigators' reports are in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. The key is with my lawyer. Everything you need to expose them is there should you choose to use it. But more importantly, everything you need to build a new life is now yours. I've watched you work 3 jobs to pay for community college. I've seen you treat others with kindness, even when the world showed you none. I've observed your strength in the face of relentless cruelty. You are everything they are not: genuine, hardworking, compassionate, and resilient. They will try to take this from you. Margaret will claim I was mentally incompetent. Bethany will insist you manipulated me. Thomas will threaten legal action. Don't let them. I made sure this will is ironclad reviewed by 3 separate law firms to ensure they can't contest it successfully. Live, my dear girl. Live the life they tried to deny you, and know that someone loved you fiercely even if I was too weak to show it when it mattered most. With all my love and deepest regrets, Grandmother Eleanor. I read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. She'd known. Someone had known and cared and tried to help. The isolation I'd felt my entire life cracked like ice in spring. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining the unfairness. Someone had witnessed it all. A soft knock at my door made me quickly hide the documents under my pillow. Hortense. It was Bethany, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Can I come in?" "It's late, Bethany." "I know, I wanted to check on your arm. Does it hurt?" 24 years of experience screamed that this was a trap. Bethany didn't do concern. She did manipulation disguised as caring when she wanted something. I stayed silent. "Look, I'm sorry about earlier. Okay, I was stressed about the wedding planning and I took it out on you. It was wrong." Wedding planning. Her marriage to Preston Hayes was 4 months away, a society event that would cement her status as the princess she'd always believed herself to be. Margaret had been in a frenzy about it for months, spending money they didn't have to create the perfect illusion of success. "Can I come in, please?" Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. She stood there in her silk pajamas, looking younger than her 26 years. For a moment, I saw the sister she could have been, if our parents hadn't poisoned her with their favoritism. "How bad is it?" She gestured to my bandaged arm. "2nd-degree burns. It'll scar." She winced. "I didn't mean for it to be that bad. You just made me so angry saying those things about stealing from Preston. You know that's not true." Except I did know it was true. I'd overheard her on the phone with her friend Melissa, bragging about the creative accounting she used to skim from the construction company's petty cash. Small amounts that added up to thousands over time, funding her shopping sprees and spa treatments. "Is that all?" I asked, exhausted and unwilling to pretend anymore. "Actually," she bit her lip, a tale she'd had since childhood when she was about to lie. "I saw a letter on the counter earlier from some law firm. Mom grabbed it before I could read it, but it looked important. Did something happen?" There it was. Margaret had seen the letter and sent Bethany to fish for information. They didn't know about the will yet, but they were suspicious. I kept my face neutral. "No idea. Maybe it was for Thomas." She studied me clearly, not buying it. "Right. Well, if you need anything for your arm, let me know. We're family after all." Family. The word tasted like ash from her lips. She left, and I heard her footsteps go directly to Margaret and Thomas's room. Whispered voices followed, urgent and planning. I pulled out the documents again. This time, photographing each page with my phone and uploading them to multiple cloud storage accounts. Then I found the business card for Eleanor's lawyer and saved his number. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I needed to be smart, careful, and ready for the war that was coming. The pain medication finally kicked in, dulling both the burn and my racing thoughts. As I drifted off to sleep, I touched the bandage on my arm. This scar would be my reminder. Not of their cruelty, but of the moment I stopped being their victim and started being their reckoning. 3 days passed in a careful dance of pretense. I went to my jobs, kept my head down, and gave no indication that anything had changed. Margaret watched me constantly, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Thomas started asking pointed questions about my plans for the future, whether I'd be moving out soon, if I'd saved enough for my own place. Bethany alternated between syrupy sweetness and probing interrogations, trying to crack whatever secret they sensed I was hiding. On the fourth day, I met with Eleanor's lawyer, Mr. Whitman, at a coffee shop downtown during my lunch break. He was an elderly gentleman with kind eyes who greeted me with genuine warmth. "Your grandmother spoke of you often," he said, sliding a key across the table. "This opens the safety deposit box she mentioned. I've handled the initial probate filings. The estate should clear within a few weeks, but I can arrange for an advance from the liquid assets if you need immediate funds." "How much would that be?" "Shebam, $50,000 could be available within 48 hours. I nearly choked on my coffee. 50,000 was more than I'd made in the last 2 years combined. "Yes, please. And Mr. Whitman, they're going to fight this." His expression hardened. "Your grandmother anticipated that. We're prepared. She hired the best estate lawyers in Connecticut to draft this will. They'd have better luck squeezing water from a stone than breaking these provisions." After he left, I went to the bank and opened the safety deposit box. Inside were dozens of folders, photographs, USB drives, and a small note for when you're ready to show the world who they really are, Isaid. E.E. I spent my entire break reviewing a fraction of the contents. The private investigator had been thorough. Photos of 8-year-old me doing laundry while Bethany got her nails done. Audio recordings of Margaret telling neighbors I was slow to explain why Bethany got opportunities I didn't. Financial records showing they'd spent my college fund on Bethany's European vacation. Even video footage of Thomas laughing while I struggled to carry groceries in the rain because they wouldn't let me use the car. That evening, I stopped at an electronics store and purchased several tiny cameras designed for home security. The advance wouldn't be available for 2 days, but I used my credit card knowing I'd finally be able to pay it off. If Eleanor's investigator had taught me anything, it was the value of documentation. I installed them carefully when everyone was asleep. One in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway outside my room. All connected to my phone, all recording to encrypted cloud storage. It felt like armor protecting me from their inevitable escalation. The next morning proved my paranoia justified. Family meeting. Margaret announced at breakfast, her voice artificially bright. "Everyone in the living room, now." I found Thomas already seated in his recliner, a stack of papers in his lap. Bethany perched on the sofa trying to look casual, despite the victory gleaming in her eyes. Margaret stood like a prosecutor ready to deliver a closing argument. "It has come to our attention," she began, "that Eleanor left you some money in her will." I stayed silent, settling into the armchair nearest the door. "Don't you think it's appropriate to discuss this with your family?" Thomas asked, his reasonable tone a thin veneer over threat. "We've supported you for 24 years, fed you, housed you, clothed you." "I paid rent," I reminded him quietly, $500 a month since I turned 18, and I buy my own food and clothes." Ungrateful," Margaret spat. "That barely covers utilities. We've sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay us. Keeping secrets. Accepting money from that toxic woman who tried to tear our family apart." "How much did she leave you?" Bethany demanded. "A few thousand. That belongs to Mom anyway. Eleanor was her mother." "Eleanor made her choices clear," I said carefully. "If you have questions about the will, you should contact Mr. Whitman." Bethany's facade cracked. "Don't play games with us. We know she left you something substantial. That lawyer called here looking for you. Just tell us how much so we can handle this as a family." "There's nothing to handle. The will is legal and binding." "Everything that woman had came from our family." Margaret's voice rose. "My father built that fortune, and it belongs to his real heirs. Not some mistake who shouldn't even exist." There it was. The truth they danced around for years, finally spoken aloud. I felt strangely calm as I stood. "I need to get ready for work." "So Sit down, Bethany shrieked, jumping to her feet. You're not leaving until you agree to sign over whatever she left you. I have a wedding to pay for, and you're not keeping money that belongs to this family. No. The simple word hung in the air like a challenge. Bethany's face flushed purple, her hands clenching into fists. What did you just say? I said no. The money Eleanor left me is mine. Legally, morally, and practically. I won't be signing anything over to anyone. You little thief! She lunged at me, but I sidestepped years of avoiding her tantrums serving me well. You probably manipulated her, told her lies about us. Well, I won't let you get away with it. She grabbed a crystal vase from the side table and hurled it at my head. I ducked, and it shattered against the wall, leaving a dent in the plaster. Through the chaos, I noticed my hidden camera capturing everything, its tiny red light, a beacon of justice. Bethany, calm down, Thomas said half-heartedly, not moving from his chair. Calm down, she's stealing our inheritance. Mom, do something. Margaret smiled coldly. Bethany's right. You've taken enough from this family. You'll sign those papers, or things will get very unpleasant for you. More unpleasant than being burned with an iron, I asked. More unpleasant than 24 years of abuse. Abuse. Margaret laughed. You've had a roof over your head and food in your belly. Millions would kill for what you've been given. But not love, I said quietly. Never that. Love is earned, Thomas interjected, and you've done nothing to earn ours. Now be reasonable, Hortense. Whatever Eleanor left you, we can work out a fair distribution. Bethany needs funds for her wedding and new home. Surely you can understand that family comes first. I learned about family from you, I replied, which is why I know exactly where I stand in yours. Bethany, frustrated by words, grabbed the fire poker from beside the fireplace. I'll make you sign those papers if I have to carve my name into your other arm. She swung it at me wildly, her rage making her sloppy. I dodged, but she kept coming, the poker whistling through the air. In her frenzy, she knocked over lamps, pictures, and chairs, turning the pristine living room into a disaster zone. That's enough, I shouted, grabbing her wrist as she swung again. Stop it, Bethany. I'll stop when you give me what's mine. She wrenched free and raised the poker again, but in her blind fury, she tripped over the coffee table she'd overturned. The poker flew from her hands, crashing through the front window. The sound of shattering glass finally seemed to break through her rage. She stood panting among the wreckage, her perfect hair disheveled, her silk blouse torn from catching on broken furniture. Look what you made me do, she hissed. This is all your fault. I'm done, I said, backing toward the door. I'm going to work, and when I come back, I'm packing my things. The advance from the estate clears tomorrow. I'll be out of your lives for good. You're not going anywhere. Margaret stepped in front of the door. Not until this is settled. Then call the police, Sire, I suggested. Explain to them why the living room is destroyed, why Bethany's holding a weapon, why you think you can hold me hostage over an inheritance you have no claim to. I'm sure that'll go well. Margaret's eyes narrowed. You've gotten bold. That won't last. We know how to handle ungrateful little parasites who forget their place. I pulled out my phone. Should I call them myself? I'm sure they'd be interested in seeing what happened here. For a moment, we all stood frozen. Then Thomas cleared his throat. Let her go, Margaret. We'll handle this properly through legal channels. Margaret stepped aside reluctantly. As I passed, she whispered, This isn't over, not by a long shot. I left them in their destroyed living room, Bethany still panting like a rabid animal among the wreckage. My hands shook as I drove to work, but not from fear. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to them completely. And thanks to the cameras, I had evidence of exactly who they were when their masks slipped. That evening, I reviewed the footage on my phone during my break. Every threat, every admission, every moment of violence captured in crystal clear video. But the best part was what I heard Bethany say after I left, not knowing about the cameras. Don't worry about the money. I've been skimming from Preston's company for 2 years. I've got enough hidden away to handle things until we get that inheritance back. And if Hortense thinks she can keep it, I'll frame her for the theft. Preston's family trusts me completely. Who's gonna believe the family disappointment over the perfect fiancé? I saved multiple copies of that confession, sending them to different secure cloud services. Eleanor's investigator had given me the blueprint, but Bethany had just handed me the ammunition. The war they wanted was coming, but they had no idea how outgunned they were. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Whitman. Advanced funds will be available tomorrow at 9 a.m. Also, Eleanor left a message for me to give you when you were ready. The truth is your weapon, but timing is your strategy. Strike when they least expect mercy. I smiled, touching the bandage on my still healing burn. Tomorrow, I'd have the resources to leave, but leaving wasn't enough anymore. They needed to learn that some trash, when burned, didn't crumble to ash. Some trash became fire itself. The $50,000 felt surreal in my bank account. I stared at the balance on my phone app, refreshing it twice to make sure the numbers were real. For the first time in my life, I wasn't calculating whether I could afford both gas and groceries this week. The freedom was intoxicating, but I had to be strategic. I withdrew enough cash to avoid immediate tracking and checked into a modest hotel on the other side of town. Let them wonder where I'd gone. My phone had been buzzing with increasingly threatening messages from all three of them, which I archived without responding. Every text was more evidence for my growing collection. 3 days into my hotel stay, an elegant invitation was slipped under my door. Bethany's engagement party at the Rosewood Country Club, the social event of the season. My name was written in perfect calligraphy on the envelope, though I knew Bethany would rather eat glass than voluntarily invite me to her precious party. Inside a handwritten note in unfamiliar script, "Your presence is specifically requested. There are things about your sister you should know. Constance Hayes." Preston's mother. In all the years Bethany had dated him, I'd met Constance exactly twice, both times brief encounters where she'd studied me with sharp intelligence before Bethany whisked Preston away. She was old money, Connecticut royalty, the kind of woman who could destroy someone's social standing with a strategically placed whisper. I spent the advance money carefully. An elegant navy dress that fit like it was made for me, proper shoes that didn't pinch a visit to a salon where they transformed my neglected hair into something sophisticated. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the family servant anymore. I saw someone who belonged in any room she chose to enter. The night of the party, I arrived precisely 30 minutes after the invitation stated, when the event would be in full swing, but not so late as to make a scene. The valet's eyes widened slightly as I stepped from my rental car, a sleek sedan, nothing flashy but worlds away from my ancient Honda. The country club was awash in golden light and white roses, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow patterns across the gathered cream of Connecticut society. I spotted Bethany immediately holding court near the fountain, in a dress that probably cost more than I used to make in 6 months. Preston stood beside her, handsome in that bland way of men who'd never faced real hardship, smiling at whatever story she was spinning. Margaret noticed me first. Her champagne glass paused halfway to her lips, eyes narrowing as she took in my transformation. She whispered urgently to Thomas, who turned with a scowl that deepened as he realized he couldn't immediately find fault with my appearance. Hortense? A cultured voice called out before they could intercept me. Constance Hayes glided over, resplendent in understated elegance that made everyone else look like they were trying too hard. "How lovely that you could make it. Come, let me introduce you to some people." She linked her arm through mine with surprising firmness, steering me away from my advancing parents. "You look wonderful, my dear. Amazing what happens when someone's allowed to bloom, isn't it?" "Mrs. Hayes, I'm not sure why you wanted me here." "Constance, please. And I think you know exactly why. Your grandmother and I were bridge partners for 30 years. She told me everything before she passed." She lowered her voice. She also asked me to watch out for you when the time came. We stopped at a group of women who greeted Constance warmly. Ladies, this is Hortense, Morris and Margaret's younger daughter, the one who just inherited Eleanor's entire estate. Quite a testament to her character, wouldn't you say? The news rippled through the group like wildfire. Within minutes, the entire party knew about my inheritance. I watched Bethany's face cycle through confusion rage and forced smile as people began approaching me with congratulations and questions about my plans. 3.2 million. One woman whispered to another not quite quietly enough. Eleanor left her everything. Well deserved, I'd say, her companion replied. Did you know she's been working 3 jobs while going to school? Meanwhile, the other one? They glanced at Bethany, who was desperately trying to redirect attention back to her engagement, her voice growing shriller with each attempt. Your timing is impeccable, I murmured to Constance. Your grandmother taught me the value of strategic revelation, she patted my hand. Now there's something else. Come with me. She led me to a quiet alcove overlooking the golf course, checking that we weren't followed. I need to ask you something directly. Has Bethany ever mentioned anything unusual about her work at Preston's company, discrepancies in accounts, perhaps? My pulse quickened. Why do you ask? Because our forensic accountants have found irregularities. Nearly $75,000 over 2 years taken in small enough increments to avoid automatic flags. Preston refuses to believe it could be Bethany, but the evidence points directly to her access codes. I thought of the video on my phone, Bethany's casual confession about skimming funds. What do you need from me? The truth. Eleanor said you were the only honest one in that family. If you know something, I need to hear it before she becomes my daughter-in-law and gains access to significantly more of our assets. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted from the main party. Bethany's voice, loud and slurred, carried across the space. There you are, you little snake! How dare you show up here trying to steal my spotlight? She stumbled toward us, champagne sloshing from her glass. Preston followed, trying to calm her, but she shook him off violently. This is my night, my engagement. Nobody cares about your stupid inheritance that you stole from my family. Bethany, darling, you're making a scene. Margaret materialized, gripping Bethany's arm. Perhaps we should step inside. No. Bethany wrenched free, pointing at me with a shaking finger. She's ruined everything. First she turns Eleanor against us. Now she's here spreading lies about me. What lies? Constance asked coolly. Bethany's eyes widened as she realized what she'd said. Nothing. I just meant she's always been jealous of me. Haven't you, Hortense, jealous that I got the life you wanted? I never wanted your life, I said quietly. I just wanted a family who loved me. Love, she laughed bitterly. You want to talk about love? You were a mistake. A burden Mom and Dad spent everything on my medical bills, and you couldn't even be grateful for the scraps. Bethany. Preston looked shocked. What medical bills? You told me you've always been healthy. She froze, realizing her champagne-fueled mistake. When I was little, it's not important. Heart condition, I supplied helpfully. Age 3, required extensive treatment. Funny how it's never mentioned in your medical history now, almost like someone's been lying to their insurance company and their fiancé. You shut your mouth! Bethany lunged at me, but her heel caught in her dress. She went down hard, champagne splashing across her designer gown and several nearby guests. The crystal glass shattered on the stone patio. Preston tried to help her up, but she slapped his hands away. Don't touch me. This is all her fault. She gestured wildly at me, mascara running down her cheeks. She's trying to ruin my life. You've done that yourself, Constance said icily. Preston, I think it's time we discussed postponing this wedding until some matters are clarified. What? No. Bethany scrambled to her feet, grass stains now decorating her dress. You can't do this to me. Mrs. Hayes, Thomas intervened, his politician smile in place. Surely this is all a misunderstanding. Bethany's just emotional about the wedding planning. Emotional enough to steal from our company, Constance asked. Yes, we should definitely discuss that. Shall we say Monday morning with our lawyers present? The party had gone completely silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. Bethany looked around wildly, seeing her perfect image crumble in real time. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. "I'll destroy you for this." "You already tried," I reminded her, touching my still bandaged arm. "How did that work out?" She screamed in frustrated rage and threw her remaining shoe at me, missing by several feet and hitting a decorative ice sculpture instead. It toppled dramatically, sending seafood and ice cascading across the buffet table. "I think it's time for you to leave," Constance told my family. "All of you. And Bethany, don't bother coming to work Monday. Your access has been revoked pending our investigation." Security materialized as if from thin air, escorting my family out, while the party guests whispered excitedly. Bethany's perfect engagement party had become the scandal of the season, and everyone would be talking about it for months. "Thank you," Constance said quietly to me as they left. "You've confirmed what I suspected. Eleanor was right about you. You're nothing like them." As the party slowly resumed, I found myself surrounded by people who'd ignored me for years, suddenly interested in knowing Eleanor's granddaughter. But I didn't feel triumphant watching Bethany's public humiliation. I felt free. The chains they'd wrapped around me for 24 years were finally breaking. And while they scrambled to salvage their crumbling facade, I was ready to build something real. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your sister's not the only one with secrets. Meet me tomorrow if you want to know what else your parents are hiding. A friend of Eleanor's." I looked back at the party, at the space my family had vacated, like a poison being drawn from a wound. Whatever came next, I was ready. Eleanor had given me more than money. She'd given me the power to finally fight back. The morning after the engagement party, I met Constance at her office in the Hayes construction building. The space was all glass and steel, commanding views of the Connecticut skyline that spoke of old money and established power. She gestured for me to sit across from her massive desk, her expression serious. "Before we begin, I need to know if you have any actual evidence of Bethany's theft, or if your comment last night was speculation based on overheard conversations." I pulled out my phone, finding the video file. 2 weeks ago, my family discovered I'd inherited money from my grandmother. They demanded I sign it over to them. When I refused, things got violent. I'd installed security cameras in the house for my protection. I played the relevant clip. Bethany's confession about skimming funds, her threat to frame me for it, her casual admission that Preston's family trusted her completely. Constance watched in silence, her face growing stonier with each word. "My God," she breathed when it finished. "She admitted to everything, and she was planning to frame you." "That's not all." I showed her the footage of the living room destruction, the iron burn incident, my parents' reactions. "This is who they really are when no one's watching." Constance stood and walked to her window, processing what she'd seen. "Your grandmother tried to warn me years ago. She said Bethany was dangerous, that she'd been twisted by Margaret and Thomas into something cruel. I thought Eleanor was exaggerating due to family dynamics. I should have listened." "What happens now?" She turned back to me, decision clear in her eyes. "Now, we protect my son and my company. I'll need copies of that recording for our legal team. We'll be filing charges for embezzlement and fraud, but Hortense, you need to understand. Your family won't take this quietly. They'll come after you with everything they have." "They already are." I showed her the threatening texts that had escalated overnight. Messages from Margaret about having me declared mentally incompetent from Thomas, about suing for defamation from Bethany, promising to make my life hell. "We can help with that. Our lawyers can file restraining orders, and I have connections with the district attorney's office. But first, I have someone you need to meet." She made a phone call, and within minutes, a woman in her 40s entered the office. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an air of quiet authority. Hortense, this is Dr. Sarah Coleman. She's been investigating your mother for several months now. Dr. Coleman extended her hand. It's good to finally meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. I should clarify, I'm not exactly who your mother thinks I am. I don't understand. Your mother befriended me at the country club 6 months ago, believing I was a psychiatrist who could be persuaded to provide certain services. She's been trying to establish grounds to have you committed, claiming you've shown signs of severe mental illness. She offered me substantial money to create false medical records. My blood ran cold. She's been planning this for 6 months. Well, longer, I suspect. But here's what she doesn't know. I'm actually Agent Coleman with the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division. We've been investigating a ring of doctors creating false psychiatric holds for family financial gain. Your mother walked right into an ongoing operation. The room spun slightly as I absorbed this information. While I'd been surviving day-to-day, Margaret had been laying groundwork to have me institutionalized. She's provided me with falsified documents about your supposed violent tendencies, drug use, and delusional episodes. All completely fabricated, of course. She even created fake witness statements from neighbors who've never actually met you. This is insane, I whispered. It's also highly illegal, Agent Coleman assured me. Insurance fraud conspiracy to commit false imprisonment forgery. Your mother is looking at serious federal charges. But I need your help to solidify the case. Would you be willing to wear a wire? Constance interjected, only with full immunity and protection. I won't have Eleanor's granddaughter put at risk. Of course, we can arrange protective custody if needed, but Margaret is getting desperate. She knows the inheritance cleared and she's accelerating her timeline. She's scheduled a meeting with me tomorrow to finalize the commitment papers. I thought of all the years of gaslighting, being told I was crazy for noticing the unfair treatment, being called delusional, for pointing out obvious truths. Margaret had been planning to make it literal, to lock me away and steal everything Eleanor tried to give me. I'll do it, I said firmly, but I want everything, not just the psychiatric fraud, the insurance fraud with Bethany's fake medical conditions, the embezzlement from Thomas's company, all of it. Agent Coleman smiled. I think that can be arranged. Your grandmother was a thorough woman. She'd been feeding us information for 2 years through proper channels. We just needed someone on the inside to confirm it all. Eleanor was working with the FBI. Unofficially, she approached us with concerns about financial crimes within your family. We couldn't act on much of it without concrete evidence, but she was patient. She said she was playing a long game for her granddaughter's freedom. Tears pricked my eyes. Even in death, Eleanor was still protecting me, still fighting for me in ways I was only beginning to understand. There's more, Constance said quietly. The person who texted you last night about meeting that was Patricia Morse, Gerald's wife. Thomas's brother Gerald. Yes, she's discovered some disturbing things about her husband's activities with your family. She's willing to share what she knows, but she's understandably paranoid about meeting safely. My phone buzzed with another message from Patricia. Parking garage on 5th Street, 3rd level noon. Come alone. What I have will change everything. Agent Coleman checked her watch. I can provide backup for that meeting if you'd like. Patricia contacted us last week about her husband's involvement in potential financial crimes. She's been gathering evidence for months. How deep does this go? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. Deep enough that your family should have been more careful about who they trusted, Constance said grimly. Pride makes people sloppy. They believed they were untouchable because they'd always gotten away with it before. We spent the next hour preparing for both meetings, the one with Patricia and tomorrow's sting operation with Margaret. Agent Coleman fitted me with a nearly invisible recording device and coached me on what topics to bring up. Constance had her lawyers draw up papers for a civil suit that would freeze any assets my family might try to hide. As I prepared to leave for the meeting with Patricia, Constance stopped me. Your grandmother would be proud. She always said you had steel in your spine, just waiting for the chance to show it. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I feel terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But remember, you're not alone anymore. You have allies, resources, and most importantly, the truth. They have lies, debt, and desperation. Who do you think wins that fight? I drove to the parking garage, Agent Coleman's team tracking my location discreetly. Patricia was already there, sitting in her silver Mercedes with the engine running. She looked like she'd aged years in recent months, stress etching lines around her eyes. Get in, she said tersely, scanning the area for threats. I slid into the passenger seat, noting the boxes of documents in the back. Thank you for reaching out. Don't thank me yet. What I'm about to tell you might make you wish you'd stayed ignorant. She handed me a folder. Gerald's been having an affair with your sister for 3 years. I opened the folder to find photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements. Bethany and Gerald in various compromising positions, dates that corresponded with when she was supposedly at wedding planning meetings or spa days with friends. But there's worse, Patricia continued. They've been planning something. I found these hidden in Gerald's home office. She passed me another folder. Inside were legal documents, forged deeds, falsified contracts papers that would transfer ownership of Thomas's house and assets to Gerald. And at the bottom, a life insurance policy on Thomas worth $2 million, taken out 6 months ago with Gerald as a beneficiary. They're planning to kill my father. My voice came out strangled. Look at the date they scheduled for the policy to become active. 2 weeks after Bethany's wedding. I think they plan to make it look like an accident during the honeymoon period when everyone would be distracted. Preston, I breathed. He has no idea what he was about to marry. There's one more thing. Patricia pulled out a small recorder. I've been recording Gerald's phone calls. Last night, after the party disaster, he had an interesting conversation with Bethany. She pressed play. Bethany's voice panicked and furious filled the car. Everything's ruined. That little witch destroyed my engagement. Preston's mother knows about the money. Gerald's response was calculatingly calm. Then we accelerate the timeline. Your father's already under investigation for embezzlement. If he has an accident before they arrest him, the life insurance pays out before assets are frozen. We can still salvage this. What about Hortense? She has the inheritance money now. Your mother's handling that. Once she's committed, you'll be appointed guardian of her assets as next of kin. The psychiatric hold paperwork is almost complete. And if she fights it? Well, accidents happen, Bethany. Your family seems prone to them. First your grandmother, soon your father, maybe your sister if necessary. Sometimes tragedy strikes multiple times. My blood turned to ice. He just admitted to killing Eleanor. Patricia nodded grimly. Mercury poisoning according to the private autopsy she arranged. Slow and steady over months during their reconciliation visits. Gerald handled the legal aspects of her estate planning. He knew exactly when she was updating her will. We have to take this to the police, the FBI, everyone. Already done. I met with them this morning. They're building a case, but they needed corroboration. Your recordings plus mine give them what they need. She looked at me with something like sympathy. I'm sorry. I know they're your family. No, I said firmly. They're not. They're just people I survived. Patricia started the car to leave but paused. Your grandmother knew something was wrong. She came to me months before she died, asking if I'd noticed anything strange about Gerald. I think she suspected, but couldn't prove it. She made me promise to watch out for you if anything happened to her. Everyone keeps telling me about these promises Eleanor extracted. She was building a network to protect me even after death. She loved you very much, said you were the only good thing to come from that poisoned family tree. Patricia pulled out a business card. My divorce lawyer, best in the state. When this all comes crashing down, you'll need legal protection from the fallout. I got out of her car and into mine, my mind reeling from the revelations. My family wasn't just toxic. They were murderous. Eleanor hadn't died naturally. Thomas was next on their list, and I would have been after that another tragic accident in a family suddenly prone to them. My phone rang. Constance. Are you safe? Yes, but what I learned, it's worse than we thought. So much worse. Come back to my office. Agent Coleman is here with the full FBI task force. Whatever Patricia told you, we need to hear it immediately. Buenos. As I drove back, I thought about the recording device hidden in my clothes, the cameras in what used to be my home, the evidence piling up like stones that would bury my family's house of lies. They'd created their own destruction with every cruel act, every criminal conspiracy, every moment they chose greed over love. Eleanor had known she might not survive to see justice done, so she'd planted seeds in every corner of their lives, watering them with evidence and careful planning, knowing that eventually the truth would grow too large to hide. I touched the burned scar on my arm, still tender but healing. They'd marked me as trash, something to be discarded and burned. They had no idea they'd actually forged me into something harder. Tomorrow, I would walk into Margaret's trap, wearing a wire, letting her confess to crimes she thought would cage me forever. But the real trap was already closing around them, all built from their own arrogance and cruelty. Eleanor's final message through her lawyer echoed in my mind. Strike when they least expect mercy. They expected me to forgive, to fold, to disappear quietly with whatever scraps I could salvage. They expected the weak child they'd trained to accept abuse as love. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been about everything. The next evening, Thomas called a mandatory family meeting with barely concealed fury in his voice. I'd been staying at a hotel since the engagement party, but I returned to the house wired for sound and backed by a full FBI surveillance team parked 2 blocks away. Agent Coleman assured me they'd move in at the first sign of physical danger. I arrived to find the living room repaired from Bethany's rampage, though the patch on the wall where the vase had hit remained visible. Gerald was already there, briefcase at his feet, wearing his lawyer face like armor. His presence made my skin crawl, knowing what he and Bethany had planned for Thomas. Good you actually showed up, Thomas growled from his recliner. Sit down. We have serious matters to discuss. Margaret stood by the fireplace like a queen holding court, while Bethany hunched on the sofa, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. The loss of her job and Preston's very public breakup had clearly taken its toll. Dark circles ringed her eyes and her hands shook slightly as she clutched a glass of wine. Let me guess, I said, remaining standing near the door. This is about the inheritance again. This is about the damage you've caused this family, Margaret spat. Thanks to your little performance at the engagement party, Bethany has lost everything. Her job, her fiancé, her social standing. Are you happy now? Bethany lost those things because she's a thief who got caught, I replied evenly. That's not my fault. You vindictive little... Bethany started to rise, but Gerald placed a restraining hand on her shoulder. Let's all remain calm, Gerald said smoothly. We're here to find a solution that works for everyone. Hortense, surely you can see that your actions have caused significant harm to your family's reputation and financial stability. My actions, I played a video of Bethany confessing to embezzlement. If telling the truth causes harm, maybe examine what you're trying to hide. Thomas slammed his hand on the armrest. Enough, you've made your point. You got your revenge for whatever imagined slights you've held on to. Now it's time to make things right. Imagined slights. I touched my still healing burn. Which part was imagined? The scar on my arm, the years of emotional abuse, the fact that you spent my college fund on Bethany's vacations? You always were dramatic, Margaret dismissed. A few harsh words over the years and you act like you were tortured. Do you know how many children would kill for the life you had? The life where I was told daily that I was unwanted, where I worked 3 jobs just to pay for community college while Bethany got a free ride to Yale, that life. See, Gerald. Bethany turned to him with practiced tears. She's delusional. She's created this whole victim narrative to justify destroying our family. This is exactly the kind of behavior that requires intervention. I noticed the meaningful look between Bethany and Gerald, the slight nod he gave her. They were still planning something even with everything crumbling around them. What kind of intervention? I asked, knowing I needed them to be specific for the recording. Margaret stepped forward. The kind where professionals help you understand reality. Dr. Coleman has been very helpful in documenting your concerning behaviors, such as your paranoid delusions about this family, your violent tendencies. After all, you attacked Bethany at her own engagement party. I never touched her. She attacked me and fell in her own drunken stupidity. That's not how witnesses remember it, Gerald interjected. Multiple guests saw you assault her, causing her to fall and injure herself. We have sworn statements from people who were conveniently looking elsewhere when it happened, but somehow saw everything clearly. I let skepticism color my voice. How much did those statements cost? Thomas stood abruptly. This is exactly what we're talking about. These paranoid accusations, this hostility toward your own family. You need help, Hortense. Professional help in a controlled environment. You mean locked up where I can't access my inheritance? If you're deemed mentally incompetent, someone would need to manage your assets, yes, Gerald confirmed. As your closest family members, that responsibility would naturally fall to your parents and sister. How convenient. It's not about money, Bethany shrieked, wine sloshing dangerously. It's about getting you the help you clearly need. Look at what you've become. Vindictive, cruel, destroying lives without remorse. That's not normal. Neither is embezzling from your fiancé's family, but here we are. She threw her wineglass at me, missing by inches and shattering against the doorframe. Red wine splattered across the wall like blood. But Bethany, control yourself, Gerald warned, but I caught the calculating look in his eyes. He was cataloging her outburst, probably planning to blame her violence on me later. Or what? Bethany laughed bitterly. You'll leave me like Preston did. Oh, wait, you can't. Not with what I know about your little schemes. The room went very still. Thomas looked between them, confusion evident. What schemes? Nothing, Gerald said quickly. Bethany's upset and saying things she doesn't mean. Oh, I mean them, Bethany continued, pouring another glass with shaking hands. Should I tell Daddy about the special insurance policies? Or maybe about those papers you've been preparing to transfer his assets, eh? You're drunk, Gerald's voice turned hard. Stop talking! Bethany, what are you saying? Margaret demanded. But Bethany was beyond carrying her perfect world in ruins and ready to burn everything down with her. Gerald and I have been together for 3 years. Didn't know that, did you, Mom? Every time I said I was at wedding planning, I was with him, and we had such lovely plans for after the wedding. What plans? Thomas's face had gone pale. Gerald stood. I think it's time I left. Bethany's clearly having some kind of breakdown. Sit down, Thomas commanded with more authority than I'd heard from him in years. What plans, Bethany? She laughed, wild and unhinged. The kind where you have a tragic accident and your loving son-in-law inherits everything through that life insurance policy he took out. The kind where little Hortense gets locked away and I control her millions. The kind where Mom gets put in a home because she's clearly showing signs of dementia. Well, you ungrateful! Margaret lunged at Bethany, but I stepped between them. Don't, I warned. The FBI is recording everything. The room froze. Gerald's face went white as paper. What? Thomas whispered. They've been recording this entire conversation. Agent Coleman isn't the psychiatrist Mom thought she hired. She's FBI. Patricia Morse gave them recordings of Gerald and Bethany planning to murder you, Dad. They killed Eleanor, too. Mercury poisoning over months. You're lying, Margaret breathed, but doubt crept into her voice. Gerald handled Eleanor's estate planning. He knew when she was changing her will to leave everything to me, so they started poisoning her. During those reconciliation visits, you pushed Mom. Small doses of mercury in her tea. She got suspicious and arranged for a private autopsy, knowing the results would go to her lawyer after her death. This is insane. Gerald stood again. I'm leaving. I wouldn't, I said calmly. There are agents outside waiting to arrest you. Patricia gave them everything. The affair, the forged documents, the murder plot. It's over. As if on cue, we heard cars pulling up outside, saw the flash of lights through the windows. You called the cops on your own family. Thomas stared at me in disbelief. No, Dad. You all called them on yourselves every time you chose crime over conscience. I just made sure someone was listening. The doorbell rang with authority, FBI voices calling for the door to be opened. Bethany crumbled onto the sofa sobbing. This isn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to have everything. The perfect wedding, the perfect life, the money. You had everything, I said quietly. You had their love, their support, every opportunity. It wasn't enough. It's never enough for people like you. Gerald made a break for the back door, but agents were already there. We heard the scuffle, the commands to get on the ground, the click of handcuffs. Margaret turned to me, hatred naked on her face. You destroyed us, your own family. You destroyed yourselves. I just survived long enough to watch it happen. The FBI agents entered, Agent Coleman among them. She nodded to me as they began reading rights and making arrests. Bethany went quietly, too broken to fight. Margaret raged and threatened until they restrained her. Thomas seemed in shock, unable to process that his brother and daughter had planned his murder. As they led Margaret past me, she hissed, I should have gotten rid of you when you were born. But you didn't, I replied, and that was your biggest mistake. When the house emptied of everyone but Thomas and me, he sank into his recliner, aging years in minutes. Was any of it real, he asked the heir? The family dinners, the holidays, the pretense of normalcy. I don't know, Dad, was it? He looked at me, then really looked at me for perhaps the first time. I suppose I deserve that. I failed you. Failed as a father. Yes, you did. Your grandmother tried to tell me once, said I was letting Margaret's hatred poison the whole family. I told her to mind her own business. He laughed bitterly. Now my daughter and brother want me dead for insurance money. Are you looking for sympathy? No, I know better than to expect that. He closed his eyes. What happens now? Now you deal with the FBI, the lawyers, the trials. Bethany killed Eleanor and plotted to kill you. Margaret committed insurance fraud and tried to have me institutionalized. You've got your own embezzlement charges to face. The house will probably be seized as evidence. Everything you built on lies comes down. And you, I move forward, build something real with the resources Eleanor left me, live the life you all tried to deny me. He nodded slowly, for what it's worth. And I know it's not worth much. I'm sorry, we chose wrong. Bethany chose greed, chose maintaining appearances over truth, chose everything except you. I gathered my purse, preparing to leave this house for the last time. I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't undo 24 years. Sorry doesn't heal scars or return childhoods. Sometimes sorry is just another word for too late. As I walked out, I heard him whisper, I know. The FBI surveillance van was still outside, agents cataloging evidence and preparing to search the house. Agent Coleman met me on the lawn. You did well in there. Got them to confess to multiple crimes. Your testimony will be crucial in the trials. What happens to Thomas? He'll face charges for the embezzlement, but given that he was also an intended victim, the prosecutor might be lenient. He's looking at prison time, but probably not life like the others. I looked back at the house that had been my prison for so long. In the window, Thomas still sat in his recliner, a broken king in a crumbling castle, built on the suffering of others. Good, I said and meant it. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was already spreading through the community. Some offered condolences for the family tragedy. Others, those who'd witnessed years of subtle abuse, offered support and validation. One stood out from Constance Hayes. Preston wants to apologize for not seeing the truth sooner. When you're ready, we'd all like to take you to dinner. You deserve to be celebrated for your courage. Eleanor would be so proud. I pulled over and cried then, not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd finally found. Truth, justice, freedom, and maybe a chance at the family Eleanor had tried to build for me through others who saw my worth. The burn on my arm throbbed, reminding me of the moment everything changed. They'd marked me as trash, tried to burn me away. Instead, they'd forged something unbreakable. I started the car and drove toward my hotel, toward tomorrow, toward a life that was finally completely mine. 3 days after the arrests, I sat in a downtown bank office, staring at documents that made my hands shake with rage. Mr. Whitman had suggested I review all my financial history, now that I had full access to family records seized by the FBI. What I found exceeded even my worst expectations. The bank manager, Mrs. Chen, looked uncomfortable as she spread papers across her desk. Your grandfather, Robert Morrison, established this trust when you were born. It was specifically designated for your education and future with your parents as trustees until you turned 25. How much was in it originally? $400,000. It should have grown to nearly $600,000 with interest by now. Should have... She slid a transaction history across the desk. The account currently contains $43.17. I stared at the pages of withdrawals. Year after year, thousands at a time. The notes beside each transaction told the story: Bethany Yale tuition, Bethany study abroad, Bethany graduation trip, home renovation, Thomas investment opportunity. They stole my entire future, I whispered. I'm afraid it's worse than that. Mrs. Chen pulled out another file. These withdrawals required your signature after you turned 18. We have them on file. She showed me document after document with my name signed at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close practiced, but wrong in subtle ways I recognized immediately. I never signed these. I didn't even know this account existed. We suspected as much when the FBI contacted us about suspicious activity. Our fraud department has been building a case. The forgeries are quite good, but forensic analysis shows they were all done by the same hand. Your mother's, we believe. I calculated quickly. $400,000 over 6 years. They'd stolen my future at roughly $66,000 a year while I worked 3 jobs to afford community college textbooks. While I ate ramen for dinner and wore shoes with holes, they spent my money on Bethany's luxuries. There's more, Mrs. Chen said gently. Your grandfather also left a letter with the trust documents to be given to you on your 21st birthday. Your parents told us you weren't mentally capable of handling it. She handed me an envelope yellowed with age. Inside my grandfather's careful script. My dear Hortense, by the time you read this, you'll be old enough to make your own way in the world. I've watched your parents favor your sister while dismissing your needs, and it breaks my heart. This money is yours alone. For college, for starting a business, for escaping if necessary. I've seen how they treat you, and I'm sorry I won't be there to protect you longer, but this fund should give you options. Choose wisely, live freely, and know that someone loved you enough to ensure you had a chance. Don't let them dim your light, little one. All my love, Grandfather Robert. Tears dropped onto the paper. He'd seen it. He'd tried to help. And they'd stolen even that from me. Can I pursue criminal charges? The FBI already is. Forgery, embezzlement, fraud. Your parents face serious federal charges just from this alone. Our fraud department will cooperate fully with the investigation. My phone rang. Preston Hayes of all people. Hortense, I'm sorry to bother you, but something's happened. The FBI just raided our offices. They found evidence that Bethany was stealing far more than we thought. But she had files on your trust fund on her work computer, records of the forgeries, plans to drain it completely before you turn 25 next year. She knew, I said numbly. She knew about the trust the whole time. It looks like she's known since she was 18. There are emails with your mother planning how to use the money. They called it redirecting resources to where they'd be appreciated. I thanked him and hung up, turning back to Mrs. Chen. Is there any way to recover the stolen funds? Your parents' assets are being frozen as we speak. The FBI will pursue restitution as part of their case. But honestly, most of it is probably gone. Spent on luxury goods vacations, things that can't be recouped. I thought of all the times Margaret had called me ungrateful for wanting new shoes for work, all the lectures about not being entitled when I asked for help with textbooks, all while they spent my money behind my back. Actually, Mrs. Chen added, checking her computer, there's been a development. The Federal Asset Forfeiture Unit just flagged several accounts. It seems your sister had quite a bit squirreled away from her embezzlement, nearly $200,000 across various accounts. Can that be seized for restitution? Already in process. It won't replace everything stolen, but it's a start. She leaned forward kindly. I know this is overwhelming, but you should know. Your grandmother Eleanor was in here last year. She showed us documentation of what your parents were doing and helped us start the fraud investigation. She said she wanted everything ready for when you were free to fight back. Even from beyond the grave, Eleanor was still fighting for me. I signed the necessary paperwork to cooperate with the investigation and walked out into the afternoon sun, feeling strangely hollow. The money mattered less than the betrayal. They'd stolen my grandfather's love, perverted it into funding for Bethany's privileges, while I struggled. On the drive back to my hotel, I got a call from Agent Coleman. We've been through your parents' house thoroughly. We found something you should see. Can you come to the FBI office? An hour later, I sat in a sterile conference room as agents showed me evidence, box after evidence box. Financial records, forged documents, and then something that broke my heart all over again, a box of cards and letters. These were hidden in your mother's closet, Agent Coleman explained. They're all addressed to you. Birthday cards from Eleanor spanning years, Christmas gifts returned unopened, letters from my grandfather before he died, asking why I never responded to his previous letters, a college scholarship offer I'd apparently won in high school but never knew about because the acceptance letter never reached me. She kept me from everyone who tried to love me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. It's worse than that. We found her journal. She documented everything. She was proud of it. Called it protecting family resources from waste. Every time someone tried to help you, give you money, offer you opportunities, she intercepted it and redirected it to Bethany. I picked up a birthday card from Eleanor when I turned 16. Inside a check for $1,000 I'd never seen and words of encouragement I desperately needed at that age. She made me believe I was alone. You weren't. You had people fighting for you that you never knew about. Agent Coleman pulled out another file. We've found 17 different incidents of mail theft and fraud related to you. College acceptance letters to schools you never knew accepted you. Job offers from companies impressed by your applications. Even a few inheritance notifications from distant relatives that your parents claimed and forged your signature for. Each revelation was another wound, another life I could have lived if they hadn't systematically destroyed every opportunity. But underneath the pain, something else grew. Cold, clear determination. Well, what do you need from me to make sure they never do this to anyone again? Your testimony will be crucial, but also we need you to go through these documents and identify every forgery, every theft, every lie. It'll be painful, but it's the only way to ensure justice. I spent the next 4 hours in that room cataloging years of abuse reduced to paper trails and criminal evidence. By the time I finished, the case against my parents had grown from serious to devastating. Multiple federal charges, decades of potential prison time, no possibility of plea bargains that wouldn't include significant incarceration. As I prepared to leave, Agent Coleman stopped me. "There's one more thing. We found a safe in Gerald's office with documents about other victims. Your family wasn't just content to destroy you. They've been running similar schemes on elderly relatives, business partners, anyone vulnerable. You expose an entire criminal network." I thought of Eleanor poisoned slowly while trying to reconcile, of Thomas obliviously planning retirement while his brother plotted his death, of who knows how many others trust abused and futures stolen by people who should have protected them. "Good," I said. "Let them all burn." That night in my hotel room, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter to my grandfather, even though he'd never read it. "Dear Grandfather Robert, they stole your money, but not your message. They hid your words, but not forever. I found the letter you left me, and I want you to know my light isn't dimmed. It's burning brighter than ever, fueled by truth and justice, and the knowledge that someone loved me enough to try. I'm 24 now, almost 25. I have scars visible and invisible, but I'm not broken. The money you left me is gone spent on someone who didn't deserve your legacy. But the love behind it, that survived. That matters. I'm free now, free to choose my own path, build my own life, become whoever I was meant to be before they tried to cage me. I'll use Eleanor's gift wisely. I'll help others who've been trapped like I was. I'll honor both your memories by living fully honestly and without apology. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for trying to save me. Even though they delayed it, your love still reached me. Your granddaughter, Hortense." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my purse. Tomorrow I'd visit his grave for the first time. Margaret had always forbidden it, claiming I'd embarrass the family at the cemetery. But I was done accepting their version of who I was allowed to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Constance Hayes. "Dinner offer still stands whenever you're ready. You've shown more grace through this than anyone could expect. Eleanor chose her heir well." For the first time in days, I smiled genuinely. My family had stolen money opportunities and years from me, but they'd failed to steal the one thing that mattered most: my ability to recognize and accept real kindness when it was offered. I had $3.2 million from Eleanor potential restitution from the frozen assets, and most importantly, the freedom to build something real. The girl who'd once balanced 3 jobs and scraped together community college tuition had options now. And I intended to use every single one. 2 weeks had passed since the arrests, and what should have been Bethany's wedding day loomed like a storm on the horizon. Despite everything, the criminal charges, the frozen assets, the complete destruction of her reputation, Margaret had somehow convinced a judge to grant Bethany bail. The conditions were strict: ankle monitor, no contact with witnesses, and surrender of her passport. But she was out, and predictably, she was pretending nothing had changed. I learned about her release when a wedding invitation arrived at my hotel. Not a cancellation notice, as any reasonable person would send, but a reminder that the Hayes-Morrison wedding would proceed as planned at the Rosewood Country Club, the same venue where her engagement party had imploded. The delusion was breathtaking. My phone rang as I stared at the invitation. Nathan Hayes, Preston's younger brother. "Please tell me you got the same insane invitation I did," he said without preamble. "The wedding that everyone knows isn't happening, yes." She's been calling vendors, insisting the show must go on. She even tried to guilt Preston into honoring their commitment for the sake of appearances. He told her he'd rather marry a rabid Wolverine. Despite everything, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. How is she paying for anything? Their assets are frozen. That's the thing. She isn't. She's promising vendors that payment is coming, that it's all a misunderstanding that will be cleared up. She's racking up more fraud charges by the day. Has anyone tried to stop her? Nathan's voice turned serious. That's actually why I'm calling. Mom thinks we should let her proceed with this delusion. She's hired extra security and plans to have law enforcement ready, but also, Hortense, I need to tell you something. What's wrong? Not wrong, just complicated. I've wanted to say this for years, but never had the courage. You deserve to know that not everyone was blind to what your family did to you. I sank onto the hotel bed, heart suddenly racing. Nathan! I've been documenting it since high school. Every time Bethany bullied you at family events, every snide comment from your parents, every time they made you eat in the kitchen while everyone else dined together. I have photos, videos, years of evidence that I kept hoping would someday help you. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because I was a coward. Because my family did business with yours. Because... He paused. Because I've been in love with you since we were teenagers, and I was terrified that interfering would make things worse for you. The confession hit me like a physical blow. Nathan Hayes. Kind, quiet Nathan, who always slipped me extra food at family dinners, who defended me against Bethany's worst cruelties, who once drove me home in a thunderstorm when my parents forgot to pick me up from work. I know the timing is terrible, he continued quickly. You're dealing with so much, and the last thing you need is complications. But watching you fight back, seeing you refuse to break despite everything they threw at you, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Nathan, You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that someone saw your worth all along, and if you need those recordings for the trials, they're yours. 7 years worth of evidence showing exactly who your family really is. My throat felt tight. You kept evidence for 7 years. I started the day of Preston and Bethany's first date. She spent the entire dinner mocking you for wearing a second-hand dress to the restaurant. You handled it with such grace, but I saw your hands shaking. I recorded her tirade in case someday you needed proof that you weren't imagining it. Tears threatened again, but these were different. Someone had seen, someone had cared enough to document the truth when I had no power to do so myself. Thank you, I whispered. You have no idea what that means. Actually, there's more. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's something else you need to know about Bethany's wedding plans. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop the next morning. I spent the night processing his confession, the revelation that I'd had an ally I never knew about. When morning came, I dressed carefully, not to impress, but to armor myself for whatever new revelation awaited. Nathan was already there when I arrived, looking unusually formal in a business suit. He stood when he saw me, ever the gentleman his parents had raised. You look well, he said softly. Freedom suits you. $66,000 in a bank account helps, I replied, trying for levity, plus knowing my tormentors are facing federal charges. His face darkened. About that. Please sit. This is going to be difficult to hear. He pulled out a tablet and showed me screenshots of messages, a group chat between Bethany and several unknown numbers. She's been recruiting people, he explained, promising them cuts of your inheritance if they help her reclaim what was stolen. She's planning something for the wedding. I read the messages with growing alarm. Bethany was promising $50,000 here, $100,000 there, all from my inheritance once she gained control. The people responding seemed eager to help, asking for details about my hotel, my schedule, my security measures. She's planning to kidnap me. Or worse, some of these messages mention permanent solutions to the Hortense problem. We've already given copies to the FBI, but they're stretched thin with the main case. Mom hired private security for you. What? They've been watching your hotel for 3 days. Discreet professional. She said Eleanor would never forgive her if something happened to you now when you're so close to freedom. I looked around the coffee shop with new eyes, wondering which patrons might be security, which might be threats. This is insane. She's on bail for murder conspiracy and she's planning another crime. Desperation makes people stupid, and Bethany's never been particularly smart, just cunning. She genuinely believes she can still salvage this, get the money, and flee the country. Her passport was confiscated. Margaret had connections at the passport office. Bethany has a fake one under another name. We know because she's been sloppy. She used Preston's old computer to arrange it, and he still had admin access. The layers of criminality were staggering. Every time I thought they'd hit bottom, they found new depths to excavate. So what do I do? Hide until the wedding passes? Nathan leaned forward. Actually, we think you should go. To the fake wedding where she's planning to kidnap or kill me? With full security FBI backup and enough surveillance to catch her in the act. One more major charge and her bail gets revoked permanently. No more chances, no more schemes. Just prison. It was risky, but I understood the logic. As long as Bethany was free, she was dangerous. Better to control the circumstances of her next crime than wait for her to strike when I wasn't prepared. Plus, Nathan added with a slight smile, there's something poetic about her final downfall happening at the wedding she refused to cancel. The event where she planned to celebrate her perfect life becoming the scene of her ultimate destruction. You've thought about this a lot. I've had years to imagine justice for what they did to you. This isn't exactly what I pictured, but it'll do. I studied him. Really looked at him for the first time. He'd been at the edges of my life for years, Preston's quiet younger brother who worked in sustainable technology rather than the family construction business. Brown eyes that had always been kind, a smile that appeared whenever he looked at me, hands that had slipped me $20 bills for gas when he knew I was struggling. Why did you never say anything before about their treatment of me? He sighed. Would you have believed me? You were so conditioned to accept their version of reality. And I was just Preston's little brother, someone else from the family that hurt you. I thought actions would speak louder than words, but maybe I was just a coward hiding behind small kindnesses. Those small kindnesses kept me going sometimes, I admitted. Knowing someone noticed even if they couldn't change things, it mattered. It wasn't enough. It was what you could do at the time. We can't change the past, Nathan, but I appreciate you telling me now. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but close. Whatever happens at this wedding, I'll be there. Not for Preston or family obligation, but for you. You shouldn't face them alone anymore. I have FBI agents and private security. That's hardly alone. You know what I mean. Someone who cares about you as a person, not just as a witness or a victim. Someone who sees Hortense, not just Eleanor's heir or the Morrison family scandal. The sincerity in his voice made something crack inside my chest. 24 years of being unseen, and now people kept appearing who claimed they'd seen me all along. It was almost too much to process. Okay, I said finally, I'll go to the wedding, but only because I want this finished. I want Bethany locked away where she can't hurt anyone else. I want to stop looking over my shoulder. We'll make sure you're safe, I promise. As we prepared to leave, he handed me a flash drive. The 7 years of documentation I mentioned, every cruel word, every act of neglect, every moment they showed their true selves. Use it however you need to. Why give it to me now? Because after the wedding, after the trials, after justice is served, I hope maybe we could start fresh. No obligations, no expectations. Just two people getting to know each other without the shadow of your family hanging over us. But I wanted you to have the evidence first with no strings attached. It's yours, regardless of what happens between us. I took the drive, its weight negligible, but its meaning enormous. Thank you, Nathan, for everything, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. You were always worth seeing. They just tried very hard to make you forget that. As I drove back to my hotel, I thought about the wedding 2 days away. Bethany, in her designer dress, playing out her fantasy while federal agents waited in the wings. The final act in our twisted family drama performed at the venue where it all began to unravel. I touched the flash drive in my pocket. 7 years of evidence from someone who cared enough to collect it. Proof that I hadn't imagined the abuse that others had witnessed it too. Nathan's quiet documentation might be the final nails in my family's legal coffin. But more than that, it was validation. Someone had seen my pain and marked it as wrong. Someone had cared enough to prepare for a day when justice might be possible. Someone had loved me quietly and from afar when I believed myself unlovable. The wedding would be a disaster. Bethany would likely try something desperate and criminal. My family's destruction would be complete and public. I couldn't wait. The morning before Bethany's delusional wedding, I met with Agent Coleman at FBI headquarters. The investigation had expanded far beyond my family's crimes against me. What started as inheritance fraud had become a multi-state criminal enterprise spanning years. "Your mother's been busy," Agent Coleman said, sliding a folder across her desk. "Even under house arrest, she's been making calls. We've had her communications tapped, of course." I opened the folder to find transcripts of Margaret's conversations with Dr. Sarah Coleman, or rather, who Margaret still believed was her corrupt psychiatrist ally. "She doesn't know you're FBI." "Not yet. We've maintained the cover to gather more evidence. She called me last night in a panic about the wedding. Apparently, Bethany's been threatening to expose something if Margaret doesn't help her escape." "Expose what?" Agent Coleman pulled out another file, this one marked with insurance company logos. "Your sister's teenage health crisis was more complicated than you knew. When Bethany was 15, she became obsessed with her weight. Started taking black market diet pills containing a substance that damaged her heart. The condition requiring all that expensive treatment, she caused it herself." I stared at the medical records, but they said it was congenital. Margaret falsified the records with help from a doctor who lost his license years ago, filed massive insurance claims for a pre-existing condition that was actually self-inflicted. We're talking about $2.3 million in fraudulent claims over 8 years. She committed insurance fraud to pay for damage Bethany did to herself. And Bethany's known the truth all along. She's been holding it over Margaret's head for years, using it to get whatever she wanted. But now, with her world crumbling, she's threatening to confess everything if Margaret doesn't help her flee. The twisted dynamics of my family never ceased to amaze me. Even their love for each other was poisoned by blackmail and lies. "There's more," Agent Coleman continued. "We had Margaret come in yesterday for what she thought was a meeting about getting the charges reduced. She was wearing a wire without knowing it when she met with Bethany afterward." She pressed play on her recording device. Margaret's voice filled the room shrill with panic. "You ungrateful little monster, after everything I've done for you." Bethany's response was ice cold. "Everything you've done, you mean the fraud. The lies I could have died because you were too proud to admit your perfect daughter made a mistake. You turned it into a crime to save face. I did it to save you the insurance money paid for the best doctors, the best treatment, the best cover-up. And now you'll help me get out of the country or I'll tell them everything. Every forged document, every bribed official, every crime you committed to keep your image intact. I'm already facing charges. What more could they do? Insurance fraud across state lines, that's federal jurisdiction, Mom. That's 20 more years on your sentence, unless you help me disappear with Hortense's money." There was a long pause before Margaret spoke again. Her voice defeated. "What do you need?" "Access to the offshore accounts, the ones you think I don't know about, the ones where you've been hiding money for years." "How did you—" "I've been watching you my whole life, learning from the master. Did you really think I didn't notice the discrepancies, the phantom consulting fees, the charity donations that went to shell companies? I know about all of it." My hands shook as I paused the recording. "She has hidden accounts. Several million, we believe, embezzled from Thomas's business over 2 decades, hidden through a complex web of offshore holdings." Bethany's right. She learned from a master, but she made one mistake Margaret didn't. What's that? She got caught. Agent Coleman pulled up financial records on her computer. Thanks to this recording, we've been able to trace the accounts. Margaret thought she was clever using old-fashioned methods. No digital trail, everything done through lawyers and paper documents. But Bethany's generation doesn't understand operational security the same way. She accessed the accounts online, left breadcrumbs we could follow. So they're turning on each other. Whoa, spectacularly. Want to hear the best part? She fast-forwarded the recording. Bethany's voice returned. If you know what the funny thing is, Mom, you created me. Every lie I've told, every person I've hurt, every crime I've committed. I learned it all from watching you. You taught me that love was conditional, that money was worth more than people, that appearances mattered more than truth. I gave you everything. You gave me your poison, and now we'll both choke on it. Unless you help me, one last crime together, mother-daughter bonding at its finest. And if I refuse, then I'll call the FBI myself. Tell them about Eleanor, how you knew I was poisoning her but did nothing because you wanted the inheritance to stay in the family. Tell them about the abortion you forced me to have at 16, because Preston's baby would have ruined the timeline for our perfect wedding. Tell them about... The recording cut to static. Agent Coleman looked grim. She destroyed the wire at that point, but we have enough. More than enough. The abortion, I felt sick. Preston never knew. No one did. Another family secret buried under money and lies. Bethany's medical records show a pregnancy terminated at 16 weeks. Margaret listed it as an appendectomy on the insurance claims. Layer after layer of crimes, each revelation worse than the last. My family wasn't just toxic. They were a criminal cancer that had metastasized through every aspect of their lives. What happened after the wire was destroyed? Margaret agreed to help. She's supposed to access the accounts tonight and prepare the funds for transfer. Of course, we'll be watching. The moment she tries, we'll freeze everything and add money laundering to her charges. And Bethany? Still planning her grand exit at tomorrow's wedding. She thinks she'll waltz in, create a distraction with some dramatic gesture, then disappear with the money while everyone's confused. She has no idea we'll have 30 agents there. I stood to leave, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer scope of their criminality. Is there any part of their lives that wasn't built on lies? Agent Coleman's expression softened slightly. Your grandmother asked the same question once. She said the only true thing in that house was your integrity. That's why she left you everything. You were the only one who couldn't be corrupted. As I drove back to my hotel, I thought about Margaret and Bethany's relationship. The mother who committed crimes to cover her daughter's mistakes. The daughter who used those crimes as weapons. Love twisted into mutual destruction, each dragging the other deeper into darkness. My phone rang. Nathan. Are you okay? You sound off. I just learned things about my mother and sister that explain so much and yet make everything worse. They've been destroying each other for years while presenting a united front against me. Do you want to talk about it? Not yet. Maybe after tomorrow, when this is all over, when she's finally locked away and can't hurt anyone else. The security team is ready. We'll have people at every entrance, every exit. She won't get near you. It's not me I'm worried about anymore. It's everyone else she might hurt in her desperation. Margaret taught her that collateral damage is acceptable if it gets you what you want. Then we stop her before she can hurt anyone else. Tomorrow it ends. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about 16-year-old Bethany so desperate to be thin that she poisoned herself. About Margaret so desperate to maintain appearances that she turned her daughter's crisis into a federal crime. About the baby that never was, another secret buried under lies and insurance fraud. They'd had every advantage, money, education, opportunities. But somewhere along the way, they'd chosen corruption over compassion, Greed over growth. Each crime had led to another, a cascade of criminality that would end with both of them in federal prison. I touched the burn scar on my arm one more time. Tomorrow, I would walk into that country club where it all began to unravel. I would watch Bethany play out her final desperate performance. And when the FBI closed in, when the handcuffs clicked shut, when the last of their delusions shattered, I would finally be free. The morning of Bethany's wedding dawned gray and drizzling as if the weather itself knew what was coming. I was reviewing security protocols with Nathan when my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "You have a collect call from Thomas Morrison at Hartford Federal Detention Center. Will you accept, Thomas, calling from jail. I hadn't heard from him since the night of arrest when he'd sat broken in his recliner. Curiosity won. Yes, I'll accept. Hortense." His voice sounded hollow-aged. "Thank God, I've been trying to reach someone for days. No one will take my calls." "What do you want, Dad?" "I need your help. My lawyer says the evidence is overwhelming. They found things at my office I didn't even know existed. Forged contracts, embezzled funds going back 15 years. They're saying I could get 20 to life. Oh, and I need bail money. The house is seized. The accounts are frozen. You're the only one with liquid assets. Please, Hortense. I know I have no right to ask, but I'm desperate." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. "You want me to use Eleanor's money to bail you out the inheritance you tried to steal." I never wanted to steal it. The lie came so easily to him even now. That was all Margaret and Bethany. I just wanted what was fair for the family. Oh, fair like spending my college fund on Bethany's luxuries was fair. I didn't know about that until the FBI showed me the records. Margaret handled the finances. I trusted her. "You knew," I said quietly. "You had to sign off on those withdrawals. You saw my name on the account. You chose to look away because it was easier than confronting what you were doing." Silence on the line, then barely audible, "You're right." "What?" "You're right. I knew. I told myself it was justified, that Bethany needed it more, that you were young and resilient and would figure things out. I chose the easy path, every time chose comfort over conscience." The admission surprised me. Thomas never admitted fault, never showed weakness. Prison had already changed him. "Is that all you called for bail money?" "No, I called to warn you. My cellmate knows people on the outside. He's heard things. Bethany's not just planning to run, she's hired someone to hurt you at the wedding, make it look like an accident in the chaos. She thinks if you're gone, the inheritance goes to next of kin." My blood chilled. "Who did she hire?" "I don't know, but Hortense, please don't go to that wedding. Whatever point you're trying to prove, it's not worth your life. The FBI knows about her plans. Security is in place." "You don't understand. This isn't some amateur she found online. My cellmate says it's a professional, someone who's done this before, someone Margaret knows from her past." What past?" Thomas laughed bitterly. "You think the fraud and embezzlement started recently? Your mother's been playing dirty since before you were born. She has connections you can't imagine. People who owe her favors, people she has dirt on. She made one call from house arrest and set this in motion." "Then why warn me? Why do you suddenly care?" "Because I'm facing the rest of my life in prison, and I've had time to think. 23 years of choosing wrong, of letting them twist me into someone I don't recognize. My brother wanted me dead for insurance money. My daughter was going to let it happen. My wife has been stealing from me the entire time. And you, the one we all dismissed and abused, you're the only decent person in this whole rotten family tree. Pretty words don't undo decades of neglect." "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to live. Skip the wedding, stay safe. Let them destroy themselves without taking you down too. Please." "Your concern is noted. Was there anything else?" "Actually, yes." His voice dropped. "My lawyer found something during discovery, security footage from the office that the FBI missed. It shows who planted the embezzlement evidence that got me arrested. What do you mean, planted? I'm guilty of a lot of things, but not everything they're charging me with. Someone added fake contracts to my files, backdated documents, to make it look like I'd stolen more than I did. The security footage shows who. Let me guess, Gerald. Jennifer, my secretary, the one testifying against me. I frowned. The woman you sexually harassed for years? I never harassed her. That's another lie. Jennifer and I were having an affair, consensual, mutual. She's married, didn't want it coming out. When the FBI started investigating, she panicked, decided to throw me under the bus paint herself as a victim plant evidence to make sure I went down hard enough that no one would believe me if I exposed our relationship. That's quite a story. It's the truth. The footage shows her accessing my office after hours going through my files. My lawyer says it could reduce my sentence significantly if we can prove some of the evidence was planted. And you want me to... What advocate for you? Tell the FBI to go easy on poor, misunderstood Thomas. I want you to know the truth. That sometimes even the guilty can be victims too. That the people you trust to pursue justice might have their own agendas. Like you had an agenda when you let them abuse me. When you chose Bethany over me every single day. Yes, he said simply, exactly like that. I'm not asking you to save me, Hortense. I'm asking you to see that everyone in this mess has their own sins, even the ones pretending to be heroes. The call timer warned we had 1 minute left. Be careful at that wedding, he said urgently. Margaret's more dangerous than you know. She's got 30 years of secrets and nothing left to lose. And Bethany, she's her mother's daughter in the worst possible way. I'll be fine, the FBI will be there. The FBI can't protect you from a bullet they don't see coming. Please just consider not going. You've won. You have the money, the evidence, the justice. Don't risk it all for one more victory. Goodbye, Thomas. Wait, will you at least think about the bail, not for me, for you, so you can look yourself in the mirror and know you were better than us, even when you didn't have to be. I'll think about it. I lied. The line went dead. I stood holding the phone processing what I'd learned. Jennifer planting evidence, Margaret hiring professional killers, everyone guilty of something, everyone betraying everyone else. Nathan found me there staring at nothing. What's wrong? I told him about the call, about Thomas's warnings and revelations. His face grew increasingly grim. We need to tell Agent Coleman immediately. If Margaret's really hired a professional... She's hired someone to kill me at my sister's fake wedding where the FBI is planning to arrest everyone, I said, suddenly exhausted. It's like a Greek tragedy written by criminals. Then don't go. Thomas is right. You've already won. What have I? They're all still out there except him. Still planning, still scheming. If I don't go tomorrow, Bethany disappears with stolen money and Margaret finds another way to come after me. It never ends. So we end it, tomorrow, with enough security to stop an army and enough surveillance to catch every crime in 4K. But only if you're sure. Was I sure? Thomas's voice echoed in my head. The first time he'd ever shown real concern for my safety. Of course, it came when he needed something, when he was trapped and desperate. But the warning seemed genuine. Margaret had resources I didn't know about, connections from decades of crime. I'm sure, I said finally, but we tell Agent Coleman everything. No surprises tomorrow. As Nathan called the FBI, I thought about Thomas in his cell, surrounded by the consequences of his choices. He'd stolen, lied, enabled abuse. But someone had also betrayed him, planted evidence to make his crimes seem worse. Even among thieves, there was no honor. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your father's right to be worried, but don't worry about tomorrow. I'll make it quick. A friend of your mother's. My blood ran cold. I showed Nathan the message. They're trying to scare you off, he said, though his face was pale. Don't let them. But as we spent the rest of the day with FBI agents revising security plans and adding more protection, I couldn't shake Thomas's words. Everyone had their own sins. Everyone was guilty of something. In my family's game of mutual destruction, I was the only player who'd refused to cheat. Tomorrow, I'd walk into their final trap with my eyes wide open. But for tonight, I sat in my hotel room and did something I'd never thought I would do. I felt sorry for Thomas Morrison. Not enough to bail him out, not enough to forgive him, but enough to recognize that he was just another casualty of the toxic ecosystem he'd helped create. They'd all turned on each other in the end. The father betrayed by his lover and brother, the mother blackmailed by her daughter, the daughter abandoned by everyone she'd trusted. And at the center of it all, the inheritance they'd killed for stolen, for destroyed their lives for. Eleanor's money had become their curse. Tomorrow, at Bethany's delusional wedding, that curse would finally claim its last victims. I just had to survive long enough to watch it happen. The country club looked like a fairy tale on the morning of Bethany's wedding. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers, gleaming string quartet warming up. The tragic irony wasn't lost on anyone. 3 federal agents dressed as catering staff checked my wire one final time, while Nathan hovered nearby, his anxiety barely contained. "Remember," Agent Coleman instructed, "we need her to make an overt move. Don't provoke, but don't retreat. Let her incriminate herself." I smoothed down my navy dress, the same one I'd worn to the engagement party that started this avalanche. "What about Margaret's hired killer?" "We've identified 3 suspicious individuals, all under surveillance. The moment anyone makes a threatening move, we'll intervene." The first guests had started arriving, confused society mavens who'd come for the spectacle rather than to celebrate. News of Preston's departure and the criminal charges had spread, but morbid curiosity won over propriety. They wanted to see how Bethany would handle the humiliation. What they didn't expect was for her to act like nothing had changed. She swept into the bridal suite like a queen wedding dress, pristine, makeup flawless. Her ankle monitor had been disguised with layers of tulle and lace. Margaret followed, playing mother of the bride despite her own ankle monitor. They'd choreographed this delusion perfectly. "Hortense," Bethany's voice rang out across the preparation area. "How wonderful that you came to support your sister on her special day." The performance was mesmerizing. She air-kissed confused bridesmaids, directed photographers who didn't know whether to capture the farce or flee, and chatted about honeymoon plans for a trip that would never happen with a groom who wasn't coming. Gerald's wife, Patricia, appeared at my elbow. "She's completely lost it," she whispered. "Even Gerald thinks she's gone too far and he's facing life in prison." "Where is he?" "Federal custody. He tried to flee last night. Made it all the way to the airport before they caught him. He had $2 million in cash and a ticket to Croatia." "No extradition treaty with the U.S., Nathan noted quietly. Patricia nodded. He'd been planning it for months. The whole plot with Bethany was just to fund his escape. He never cared about her. She was just another mark. I watched Bethany directing her sham wedding with new eyes. Everyone had betrayed everyone. Gerald used her while planning to abandon her. Margaret helped while scheming to steal the offshore accounts. Thomas warned me while begging for bail money. Trust was the rarest currency in my family, and they'd all spent it long ago. "Ladies and gentlemen," the wedding coordinator looked desperately confused but continued her announcement. "Please take your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly." "What ceremony?" someone whispered. "There's no groom." But Bethany had thought of that too. As guests filled the rose-decorated space, Preston Hayes walked in, not in a tuxedo but in a business suit flanked by lawyers. "What's happening?" I asked Nathan. His jaw dropped. "I have no idea. He was supposed to be in New York today." Preston took his place at the altar, but instead of joy, his face showed cold determination. Bethany appeared at the back of the aisle, radiant in her delusion, and began her march to wedding music that felt more like a funeral dirge. The crowd held its breath as she reached him. Preston raised a hand before she could speak. I'm not here to marry you, he announced, voice carrying clearly. I'm here to serve you with a civil lawsuit for theft, fraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. You destroyed my family's trust and our company's reputation, so I am returning the favor. He handed her a thick envelope. You're being sued for everything you'll ever have, including any inheritance you thought you might receive. My family will pursue this until you have nothing left but the prison clothes they'll give you. Bethany's mask finally cracked. You can't do this? We're supposed to be married. I'm wearing the dress. The dress you bought with stolen money. Constance Hayes emerged from the crowd. The one you charged to our company accounts even after you were fired. Add that to the lawsuit. This is Hortense's fault. Bethany spun wildly, searching for me in the crowd. She poisoned you all against me. She's the criminal. She stole my inheritance. Actually, a new voice interrupted. Gerald appeared in handcuffs, escorted by federal marshals. About that inheritance scheme we discussed. The crowd gasped. Bethany went white. Gerald smiled coldly. I've been thinking in custody about loyalty, betrayal consequences. Funny how clear things become when you're facing life in prison. So, I made a deal. Shut up, Bethany hissed. War, full confession in exchange for consideration at sentencing. Every crime, every plot, every person involved. He looked directly at her, including how you were planning to kill Hortense today and frame your mother for it. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Margaret shot to her feet. What? Oh, did she not tell you? Gerald's laugh was bitter. Your precious daughter was going to have Hortense killed, then point the investigation toward you. After all, you're the one who hired a killer. She just redirected them. She figured with you in prison for murder and her father already locked up, she'd finally get everything. You're lying! Bethany and Margaret screamed in unison, then looked at each other with dawning horror. Am I? Gerald produced a recording device. I've been wearing a wire for the FBI since yesterday. Every conversation we've had is documented, including the one where you explained how you'd manipulated your mother into hiring her old contact, then gave him different instructions. Agent Coleman stepped forward. Bethany Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, theft, and violation of bail conditions. But Bethany wasn't done. As agents moved toward her, she grabbed the wedding cake knife from the nearby table. Stay back, she waved it wildly. I'll kill her myself if I have to. This is all her fault. Everything was perfect until she existed. The crowd scattered. Nathan stepped in front of me protectively, but I moved around him, facing my sister for what I knew would be the last time. It was never perfect, I said quietly. It was all built on lies. Every moment of your golden life was paid for with crime and cruelty. You had everything. Their love, their money, their devotion. But it was never enough because it was never real. Shut up. You don't know anything. You were nothing. Trash. A mistake. The seconds. I was a child. Your sister. Someone who would have loved you if you'd let me. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Regret, recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by rage that had nowhere left to go but forward. She lunged with the knife. Time slowed. I saw Nathan moving agents, drawing weapons, Margaret screaming, but I also saw the truth. Bethany was already destroyed. This was just her final act of self-immolation. The tackle came from an unexpected source. Jennifer Thomas's secretary appeared from nowhere and knocked Bethany sideways. The knife clattered across the marble floor as they went down in a heap of wedding dress and determination. I'm done letting this family destroy lives, Jennifer panted, pinning Bethany down. Thomas might be guilty, but he was right about one thing. We all made choices. I choose to stop this. Agents swarmed in securing Bethany, while she screamed incoherently about stolen lives and unfair fates. Margaret tried to run, but was caught at the door. Gerald watched it all with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally found a way to hurt those who'd hurt him. As they dragged Bethany away, she looked at me one last time. I hope you're happy, she spat. You got everything you wanted. No, I replied. I wanted a sister. I wanted a family. I wanted love that didn't come with conditions. I got justice instead. It's not the same thing. Preston approached as the chaos died down. I'm sorry you had to see this. I didn't know about the murder plot. I just wanted to serve the papers publicly to humiliate her like she humiliated my family. Revenge makes us all smaller, I said, suddenly exhausted. Constance appeared with Nathan. The reception hall has been cleared, but we had the caterers prepare the food anyway. It seems a shame to waste it. Would you join us for a very different kind of celebration? Celebrating what? Survival, Nathan said softly. Truth. The end of a very long nightmare. As we moved toward the reception hall, Agent Coleman stopped me. Your testimony won't be needed for a while. Bethany's confession on the wire plus Gerald's cooperation gives us everything we need. You're free to go. Free. Such a simple word for such a complex feeling. The reception was surreal. Wedding food at a wake for my family's criminal empire. Patricia raised a glass of champagne. To Eleanor Morrison, who saw it all coming and made sure truth would win. We toasted the grandmother who'd loved me from afar, who'd planted seeds of justice in every corner of their corrupt lives. As I sipped champagne in a room decorated for a wedding that became a crime scene, I thought about choices. Thomas chose comfort over conscience. Margaret chose appearance over authenticity. Bethany chose greed over growth. Gerald chose schemes over honesty. Even Jennifer chose affairs over integrity, though she'd found redemption at the end. But Eleanor chose me. Nathan chose to document truth. Constance chose justice over reputation. Patricia chose evidence over silence. And I chose to survive, to resist their poison, to remain myself, despite every attempt to break me down. What now? Nathan asked as the strange celebration wound down. Now I live, I said simply, without looking over my shoulder, without waiting for the next attack, without apologizing for existing. I just live. Sounds perfect, he smiled. Mind if I live alongside you? No pressure, no expectations. Just two people figuring out what normal looks like. I looked at him. Kind Nathan, who'd kept 7 years of evidence to protect me, who'd stood between me and a knife, who'd seen my worth when I couldn't. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. As we left the country club, I spotted the wedding photographer, still confused but professional, capturing the empty altar and scattered roses. The perfect metaphor for my family. Beautiful surfaces hiding empty hearts, pretty lies scattered like petals on the floor. Tomorrow the trials would begin, the evidence would mount, the sentences would be pronounced, justice would be served in measured doses of years behind bars. But today in a reception hall meant for false joy, I'd found something real, freedom, friendship, and the possibility of a future untainted by the past. Bethany was wrong. I hadn't gotten everything I wanted. I'd gotten something better, everything I needed. The actual wedding day arrived with cruel sunshine, as if nature itself wanted to illuminate every detail of the coming disaster. I stood in my hotel room, surrounded by FBI agents and security personnel, the weight of what was about to happen, pressing down like a physical force. Nathan hadn't left my side since yesterday's revelations about the murder plot. Final wire check. Agent Coleman announced, her hands efficient but gentle. Remember, Bethany's already in custody, but Margaret's still dangerous. She made bail this morning. How? Nathan demanded. After everything we learned. Her lawyer argued the murder plot was Bethany's alone. Without direct evidence linking Margaret to the redirected hit, the judge granted bail with stricter conditions. She'll be here today. We're counting on it. One wrong move and she's finished. The country club had been transformed overnight from yesterday's crime scene back into wedding wonderland. New flowers, repaired decorations, and a sense of unreality that made my skin crawl. Guests were arriving again, fewer than yesterday, but still enough to witness whatever was about to unfold. She really sent out new invitations, I marveled. After being arrested at her own wedding, she sent out invitations for a do-over. Delusion or strategy, Nathan wondered. Is she so far gone she believes this will work, or is this part of a bigger plan? We got our answer when Bethany appeared. She had entered through the main doors like visiting royalty, and the crowd gasped collectively. No ankle monitor, no handcuffs, no orange jumpsuit. She wore the same wedding dress, cleaned and pressed her makeup flawless, her smile serene. "That's impossible," Agent Coleman muttered into her radio. "All units confirm. Is the suspect still in custody?" The response crackled back. "Confirmed. Bethany Morrison is in her cell." I stared at the bride greeting guests with air kisses and musical laughter. Same height, same build, same mannerisms perfected down to the way she tilted her head when pretending to listen. "Who is that?" Nathan studied her intently. "The walk is right, but something's off about the hands." Bethany always gestured wider, more dramatically. The fake Bethany spotted us and glided over, her smile never wavering. "Hortense, darling, so glad you could make it to my actual wedding. Yesterday was just a rehearsal, you understand. Preston and I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for the real ceremony." Up close, the differences were subtle but clear. The eyes were the wrong shade of blue, the voice pitched slightly lower. But the performance was flawless. Someone had studied Bethany intensely. "I'm afraid Preston won't be coming," I said carefully. She laughed, the sound eerily accurate. "Oh, sister dear, you always were jealous of what we have. But don't worry, I forgive you for yesterday's little scene. That's what family does." She swept away before I could respond, continuing her circuit of confused guests. Agent Coleman appeared at my elbow. "We've identified her. Melissa Crawford, Bethany's best friend from Yale, theater major before she dropped out. Apparently, Bethany promised her $1 million to play bride for the day." "But why? What's the point of a fake wedding with a fake bride?" "Distraction," Nathan said suddenly. "This is all a show to keep us looking here while something else happens somewhere else." Agent Coleman's radio crackled urgently. "All units, we have a breach at Morrison residence. Margaret Morrison has violated house arrest. GPS shows her heading north on I-95. "She's running," I said, "using her daughter's fake wedding as cover to escape." "Not just running." Another agent approached with a tablet showing bank alerts. Someone's accessing the offshore accounts. Multiple transfers initiating from Margaret's hidden holdings. Over $4 million in motion. The elaborate theater made sense now. While everyone watched the fake bride play out Bethany's fantasy, Margaret was executing their real plan: drain the accounts and disappear. "Do we pursue Margaret or maintain coverage here?" an agent asked. "Both," Coleman decided. "Alpha team stays here in case this is a double blind. Beta team intercepts Margaret, and we keep eyes on our fake bride. She knows something." As if sensing scrutiny, Melissa, as Bethany raised her champagne glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, before my beloved Preston arrives, I wanted to share some family news. My dear mother Margaret sends her regrets. A sudden illness prevents her attendance. But she wanted me to share her final gift to the happy couple." She produced an envelope with theatrical flair. Inside this envelope is the location of something very special, something our family has kept hidden for years. Consider it my wedding gift to whoever's brave enough to claim it. "Don't touch that," Coleman warned, but I was already moving forward. "What are you doing?" Nathan grabbed my arm. "Ending this." I walked through the crowd to face the imposter. "That's a beautiful performance, Melissa. Bethany must have coached you well." Her smile flickered but held. "I don't know what you mean, sister." The problem with studying someone's mannerisms is you also absorb their tells, like the way you touch your ear when you're nervous. Bethany did that too. Or how you favor your left foot because Bethany broke her right ankle in high school and always shifted her weight. The crowd murmured, sensing blood in the water. Melissa's composure cracked. "Oh, so what?" She dropped the act, her natural voice emerging. She deserved a perfect wedding. After everything you took from her, she deserved one perfect day. Everything I took, she's in federal prison for trying to murder me. Because you drove her to it. You and your sanctimonious victim act, stealing her inheritance, her fiancé's respect, her parents' attention. You poisoned her entire life. I was the one poisoned, literally, by the grandmother she murdered. Melissa laughed bitterly. You think you're so innocent. Poor little Hortense, abused and neglected. Did you ever think maybe they treated you that way because they could sense what you really were? A cuckoo in the nest waiting to destroy them all? Bethany promised you $1 million, I said quietly. From what account with what money everything's frozen or seized? Uncertainty flickered across her face. She said once her mother handled things. Her mother, who's currently fleeing the state, who's transferring every hidden dollar to offshore accounts in her own name, did Bethany really think Margaret would share? You're lying. Agent Coleman stepped forward with her tablet. GPS shows Margaret Morrison just crossed into Massachusetts. The account transfers are going to banks in Cyprus, all in Margaret's name only. Your friend was betrayed just like everyone else who trusted this family. Melissa's hand shook as she held the envelope. No, Bethany said, she promised. What's in the envelope, Melissa? She opened it with trembling fingers, pulling out a single sheet of paper. Her face went white as she read. What does it say? Nathan asked. Melissa's voice came out strangled. GPS coordinates and a message. The truth about Hortense is buried here. Signed Eleanor Morrison. My blood chilled. That's not possible. Eleanor never... Yesterday's coordinates. Coleman interrupted, checking her phone. They match a storage unit rented by Margaret Morrison 15 years ago. We need units there immediately. It's a trap, Nathan insisted. Margaret's trying to lure Hortense somewhere isolated. But I was already moving. Or there's actually something there. Something Margaret doesn't want found, but Bethany knows about. Some final secret that explains everything. You're not going, Nathan said firmly. I have to. Don't you see this is the last piece? Whatever's in that storage unit, it's the thing they've been protecting all these years. The root of all of it. Coleman made rapid decisions. Full tactical team. We go in prepared for anything. Melissa Crawford, you're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy. The rest of you clear the venue. As agents moved to secure the scene, Melissa grabbed my arm. She really loved you, you know. Bethany, in her own twisted way, she used to cry about losing her little sister, about how different things could have been if you'd just accepted your place. Her place for me was hell. No, her place for you was safe. Beneath notice, beneath achievement, beneath their expectations. Do you know what it's like to be the golden child? To have every move watched, every failure magnified. She carried the weight of their demands while you got to be invisible. She envied you that freedom. Freedom. I worked 3 jobs. I wore shoes held together with duct tape. I ate leftovers from restaurant dumpsters when money ran out. And she starved herself to fit in designer clothes, poisoned her heart trying to be thin enough, had an abortion at 16 because a baby would ruin their timeline. You got neglect. She got suffocation. Neither of you got love. The revelation reframed everything again. 2 sisters, both abused in different ways. One with too much attention, one with none. Both twisted by parents who saw children as investments rather than individuals. She still chose to become them's. I said finally. I chose to resist. That's the difference. Melissa laughed bitterly as they cuffed her. Did you? You're about to chase down their last secret, risk everything for one more revelation. You're as trapped in their web as any of us. The only difference is you call it justice instead of revenge. They led her away, but her words lingered. Was she right? Was I so different from them, or just playing the same game with different rules? We don't have to go, Nathan said quietly. Margaret's being tracked. Bethany's locked up. Melissa's arrested. We could walk away right now, leave whatever's in that storage unit buried. I looked around the ruined wedding, the confused guests, the elaborate deception crumbling like everything else my family touched. Somewhere to the north, Margaret was running with stolen millions. Behind bars, Bethany was probably spinning new schemes. And somewhere in a storage unit, a truth waited that had shaped 24 years of pain. Eleanor wanted me to find it, I decided. Whatever it is, she left those coordinates for a reason. One last gift or one last revelation. Either way, I need to know. Agent Coleman returned with a full tactical team. The storage facility is secured. We're ready when you are. I took Nathan's hand. Come with me, I don't want to face this alone. Always, he promised. As we left the country club for the last time, I saw workers already beginning to dismantle the decorations. By tomorrow, it would be like none of it had happened. The fake wedding, the arrests, the generational tragedy playing out in public, all of it swept away like rose petals after a storm. But the storage unit waited patient and full of secrets. Margaret was fleeing with blood money, Bethany was locked away with her delusions, and I was racing toward one final truth that would either free me or destroy me. The wedding that never was had become something else entirely, a funeral for the Morrison family legacy, and somehow I was both mourner and gravedigger victim and witnessed the destroyed child and the avenging angel. Time to see what Eleanor had left buried for me to find. The storage facility sat on the outskirts of Hartford like a forgotten tomb rows of identical units holding the detritus of lives lived and lost. Our convoy of FBI vehicles pulled up to Unit 447, the numbers matching the coordinates Melissa had revealed. Agent Coleman's team secured the perimeter, while Nathan and I waited in an armored SUV, tension thick as smoke. Thermal imaging shows the units empty of people, an agent reported. But there's definitely something in there. Large mass giving off slight heat. Heat, Coleman frowned. From what? Unknown. Could be electronic equipment on standby. Could be decomposition. My stomach lurched. Decomposition. We're prepared for anything, Coleman assured me. Ready to breach. The metal door rolled up with a grinding shriek, revealing darkness that seemed to swallow the afternoon light. Agents swept in with flashlights and weapons drawn. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, oh my God, get forensics here now! Nathan tried to hold me back, but I was already moving. I had to see, had to know what final horror my family had hidden. Inside the unit, agents parted to let me through, their faces grave. The storage unit was lined with filing cabinets, boxes of documents, and in the center, a medical refrigeration unit still running, still humming its electric vigil over whatever lay inside. Don't open that, I whispered, but Coleman was already signaling her team. They opened it carefully, professionally, revealing rows of preserved tissue samples, blood vials, medical specimens, all labeled with clinical precision. And at the bottom, wrapped in plastic and medical certificates, something that made everyone freeze. Are those... Nathan couldn't finish. Embryos. The forensic specialist confirmed. Cryogenically preserved embryos, at least a dozen, judging by the containers. I stared at the labels, each dated 15 years ago, each marked with the same two names, Margaret Morrison and unknown donor. I don't understand, I said numbly. Coleman had moved to the filing cabinets, pulling out medical records, IVF documentation. Your mother underwent extensive fertility treatments after you were born. Multiple rounds, multiple failures, but she had these embryos created and stored. Why hide them? Why here? Look at this. Another agent held up legal documents. Contracts with a surrogate, payment records, birth certificate, applications pre-signed. She was planning to have more children without Thomas knowing. That doesn't make sense. They already had 2 daughters they couldn't love properly. No, Nathan said, slowly studying the donor profiles. Look at the donor characteristics Margaret selected. Blonde hair, blue eyes, high IQ athletic build. She wasn't trying to have more children like you. She was trying to replace me, I finished. Create more Bethanies. The full horror of it sank in. Margaret had spent years, and who knows how much money trying to manufacture the perfect children to dilute my existence. When that failed, she'd stored the embryos like frozen possibilities, backup plans for a better family that never came. There's more, Coleman said grimly. Financial records showing she embezzled the IVF money from Thomas's company. He never knew about any of this. And these medical files, she listed different names at different clinics to circumvent regulations. This is medical fraud on a massive scale. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number with a video attachment. Despite Coleman's warning, I opened it. Margaret's face filled the screen, filmed in what looked like a hotel room. She looked haggard but defiant. Hello, Hortense. If you're watching this, you found my insurance policy. Those embryos were supposed to be my escape route. Sell them to desperate couples, use the money to start over. But you've ruined that, like you've ruined everything else. She leaned closer to the camera. You want to know the truth? The real reason I hate you, it's not because you were unplanned or because you ruined my figure. It's because you look exactly like my sister. The one who died because of me. My blood went cold. What sister? The video continued. Helena was 2 years younger than me, just like you and Bethany. But she was the favorite, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. So when we were teenagers, I pushed her down the stairs. Made it look like an accident. My parents never suspected their perfect Margaret could be capable of such a thing. Nathan grabbed my hand as Margaret's confession continued. But then you were born, and it was like Helena had come back to haunt me. Same eyes, same stubborn chin, same way of looking at me like you could see right through to my rotten core. I tried to love you, I really did. But every time I looked at you, I saw her broken body at the bottom of those stairs. So I decided to do it right this time. I poured everything into Bethany, made her perfect, made her mine, but you wouldn't disappear like you were supposed to. You kept surviving, kept fighting, kept reflecting Helena back at me with every breath. The camera shook as she moved it. Those embryos were going to be my do-over. Children who looked like Bethany, who would never remind me of my sins. But now that's gone too. You've taken everything, just like Helena tried to take my parents' love. I'm done running, she concluded, done pretending. By the time you see this, I'll have finished what I started. Thomas always loved his boat more than his family. Such a shame about the gas leak. He should have been more careful. The video ended. I stood frozen, processing the confession. Margaret had killed before, would kill again, and Thomas. The boat, I screamed. Thomas mentioned his boat in jail, said he was planning to sail away if he made bail. Margaret knows. Coleman was already on her radio barking orders. All units to Hartford Marina. We have a potential homicide in progress. Suspect is Margaret Morrison, victim Thomas Morrison. Possible explosive device. We raced from the storage facility siren, screaming. My phone rang. The detention center. Is this Hortense Morrison? Your father posted bail an hour ago. A woman matching your mother's description paid cash. He said they were going to discuss divorce terms on neutral ground. Did he say where? His boat, the Bethany Marie at Hartford Marina. Of course. Named after his favorite daughter, the boat had been his escape from family drama for years. Now it would be his tomb if we didn't reach him in time. The marina came into view, peaceful in the afternoon sun. Boats bobbed gently in their slips, families enjoying the weather. No sign of impending murder. There, Nathan pointed, slip 47, the Bethany Marie. Thomas's yacht sat pristine in the water, looking exactly as it always had during happier times. Or at least, times we'd pretended were happier. No sign of movement on deck. Wait here, Coleman ordered, but I was already running. Hortense, stop. Nathan chased after me. I leaped onto the boat, calling out, Thomas, Margaret, anyone. The cabin door was open. Inside, I found them. Thomas sat slumped in the captain's chair, unconscious but breathing. Margaret stood behind him with a gas can in one hand and a lighter in the other. She looked almost peaceful, like she'd finally found clarity in madness. "You're too late," she said calmly. "The engine's been leaking gas for 20 minutes. One spark and we all go up." "Why?" I asked, though I already knew. "Because I'm tired of paying for other people's sins. First Helena's for being born perfect, then yours for being born at all, then Bethany's for becoming the monster I created, even Thomas's for being too weak to be the partner I needed." "So you'll kill him, kill yourself?" "Kill us all if I'm lucky. You had to follow, didn't you? Had to dig up every secret exposé, every truth. Well, here's the last truth, Hortense. We're all poisoned. Every Morrison tainted by generations of greed and cruelty. The kindest thing I can do is end it." "That's not your choice to make." "Isn't it?" She flicked the lighter, flame dancing. "I'm the mother. I created this family. I have the right to destroy it." "You're not my mother," I said quietly. "You're just the woman who gave birth to me. Eleanor was more of a mother in absence than you ever were in presence." Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. "Eleanor, Saint Eleanor, who saved you from beyond the grave. You know what she told me once, that I was raising my daughters to be weapons against each other, that I was recreating my own childhood trauma, as if she hadn't done the same with me and Helena. So break the cycle, put down the lighter, choose differently." "Choose," she laughed bitterly. "I've been making the same choice since I was 14. The choice to survive at any cost, to win no matter who loses. It's too late to choose differently." "It's not," Thomas mumbled, stirring. "Margaret, please, we can fix this." "Fix it," she rounded on him. "You didn't even know I was stealing from you for 20 years. Didn't know about the embryos, the affairs, the murders I was planning. You saw what you wanted to see, just like always." "I know I failed you," Thomas said weakly. "Failed our daughters. But this isn't the answer." "Isn't it?" She held the lighter higher. "Hortense gets her inheritance free and clear. Bethany can't hurt anyone from prison. You don't have to face 20 years behind bars. Everyone wins." "Everyone dies," I corrected. "That's not winning. That's just the ultimate Morrison family tradition. Mutual destruction disguised as love." Sirens wailed closer. FBI agents would storm the boat any second. Margaret heard them too. "Last chance," she said. "Leave now or burn with us. Your choice." I looked at Thomas, the man who'd failed me as a father, but was still human, still breathing, still capable of change, even if he'd never choose it. I looked at Margaret, so twisted by her own trauma that she'd become the very monster she'd fled. "No," I said firmly. "I'm done running from this family. If you want to burn it all down, you'll have to go through me." "So be it." She lowered the lighter toward the gas-soaked floor. Time slowed. I saw Nathan on the dock screaming my name, saw agents raising weapons they couldn't fire near all this gasoline, saw Thomas reaching weakly for Margaret, finally trying to stop her instead of enable her. And I saw myself reflected in the cabin window, not Helena's ghost haunting Margaret, not the unwanted child begging for scraps, just Hortense, scarred but strong, refusing to let their poison claim any more victims. I dove forward, tackling Margaret before the flame could drop. We crashed into the navigation equipment, her lighter flying from her hand and skittering across the deck. She fought like a wild animal, all her refined composure gone, replaced by primal rage. "You ruined everything," she screamed, clawing at my face. "You were supposed to disappear, to die, to never exist." "But I did exist," I gasped, holding her wrists. "I do exist, and I'll keep existing no matter how much you hate it." Agents swarmed the boat, pulling us apart. Someone shut off the leaking engine. Someone else carried Thomas to safety. Through it all, Margaret kept screaming, wordless animal sounds of a soul finally shattering completely. They sedated her, eventually strapping her to a gurney as she mumbled about Helena and stairs and frozen babies that would never be born. The last thing she said before the drugs took her was my name. Not in anger, but in something like recognition. "Hortense," she whispered, "you're not Helena. You're you. I'm sorry I couldn't see that sooner." Then she was gone, wheeled away to face justice or madness or both. I sat on the dock, gasoline fumes and my hair bruises forming on my arms, watching them process the scene. Nathan appeared with a blanket and water wrapping me in quiet comfort. "You could have died," he said softly. "We all could have. That's what stopped me from leaving. The realization that their self-destruction always claims innocent victims. First Eleanor, then almost Thomas, eventually anyone in their orbit." "So you saved the man who neglected you for 24 years. "I saved a human being from a murderer. The fact that they're my parents is just context." Thomas was being treated by paramedics, awake but shaken. He caught my eye across the chaos and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." I nodded once. We weren't fixed. Might never be. But he was alive to face his consequences, and I was free of the guilt that would have come from letting him die. "What happens now?" Nathan asked. Agent Coleman approached with updates. "Margaret's being held for psychiatric evaluation. Between the confession on video and the attempted murder, she's looking at life without parole. The embryo discovery adds medical fraud charges. She's done." "And Bethany?" "Still in custody, still delusional, still claiming this is all a misunderstanding. But with Melissa's testimony and Gerald's cooperation, she's facing 25 to life. Thomas, under arrest again. No more bail after this stunt, but his cooperation might reduce his sentence. 10 to 15 instead of 20 to life. The Morrison family scorecard, 1 dead by poisoning 3, heading for prison. 1 survivor standing on a dock reeking of almost explosion. Oh, Coleman added, Margaret's accounts were frozen mid-transfer. About $2 million made it offshore, but we caught the rest. Combined with the seizure of assets from Bethany and Thomas, you're looking at substantial restitution. I don't want their money, I said automatically. Then donate it. Start a foundation. Help other abuse survivors, but don't let their crimes go unpunished financially, too. She was right. The money they'd stolen, embezzled, and hoarded could do good in the world, could help people escape their own toxic families. Eleanor would approve. As the sun set over Hartford Marina, painting the water red as blood, I made my decision. The Morrison Family Foundation for Survivor Support, I said. Every penny they stole goes to helping people escape what I endured. Therapy, legal aid, safe housing, education funds. Turn their greed into someone else's freedom. Nathan smiled. Perfect. Eleanor's inheritance for you, their crime money for others. Justice and mercy. We walked away from the marina as crime scene tape went up around the Bethany Marie. The boat named for the Golden Child had almost become a tomb for the whole family. Instead, it was just another piece of evidence, another Morrison family asset to be sold at auction. I was done with boats, with storage units, with hidden secrets and explosive revelations. Done with the past except as fuel for a better future. Tomorrow, I'd start building something real with Eleanor's gift. Next week, I'd testify at trials. Next month, I'd launch a foundation to help others escape their own hells. But tonight, I just wanted to wash the gasoline from my hair and hold Nathan's hand and breathe free air that didn't smell like Morrison family poison. The collapse was complete. The family that had built itself on lies, theft, and cruelty had finally imploded. And I was the only one left standing, scarred but whole, to tell the tale and make sure it never happened again. Justice tasted like smoke and salt and freedom all mixed together. It was enough. The federal courthouse in Hartford stood like a monument to justice, all marble columns and imposing architecture. 6 months had passed since the marina incident. 6 months of preparation, healing, and building a new life. Now came the reckonings. I sat in the witness waiting room, hands steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Nathan was there, of course, along with Patricia Morse and several other witnesses. We were estranged club survivors of Morrison family crimes, bound together by shared trauma and the pursuit of justice. Hortense Morrison, the bailiff called. "You're up." The courtroom was packed. Media, victims' rights advocates, and curious citizens filled every seat. At the defendant's table sat Bethany, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her diminished frame. Prison had worn away her polish, leaving something raw and desperate. I took the oath and settled into the witness chair, meeting Bethany's eyes directly. She looked away first. "Ms. Morrison," the prosecutor began, "can you describe your relationship with the defendant?" "She's my sister, 2 years older." "And how would you characterize your childhood together?" I took a breath. From my earliest memories, I was made to understand I was unwanted, a burden, a mistake, while Bethany was given every advantage: private tutors, European vacations, unlimited financial support. I was denied basic necessities and told to be grateful for scraps. For 4 hours I testified. Every incident, every cruelty, every crime I'd witnessed or endured. The Christmas when I got nothing while Bethany opened thousands of dollars in gifts. The school events where my parents sat front row for her but didn't attend mine. The systematic theft of my education fund while I worked 3 jobs to afford textbooks. Let the record show the witness is indicating the scar on her left forearm. The prosecutor noted as I demonstrated where Bethany had burned me with the iron. "She held it there for approximately 10 seconds. I continued, voice steady. "When I screamed for help, our mother laughed and said, 'That's what trash gets for existing.' Our father added that if he were Bethany, he would have burned my face too." The jury looked horrified. Several people in the gallery wiped away tears. Bethany stared at the table, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles went white. Cross-examination came from Bethany's defense attorney, a sharp-dressed woman who specialized in impossible cases. "Ms. Morrison, isn't it true you inherited $3.2 million from your grandmother?" "Yes." "And isn't it true that this inheritance was the source of conflict between you and your family?" "No, the conflict existed for 24 years before I inherited anything. The inheritance simply prevented them from continuing to abuse me without consequences." "You claim systematic abuse, but you lived in their home, ate their food, enjoyed their protection." "I paid rent from age 18, $500 a month while working minimum wage jobs. I bought my own food when I could afford it, which wasn't always. As for protection, they failed to protect me from their own violence." The attorney tried different angles, but I'd been prepared by the prosecution team. Every trap was sidestepped, every insinuation refuted with facts. The 7 years of evidence Nathan had collected proved invaluable, providing video and audio corroboration for events the defense tried to dispute. "No further questions," the attorney finally conceded. As I stepped down, I passed Bethany. For just a moment, she looked up. "I'm sorry," she whispered so quiet only I could hear. I paused. "I know, it doesn't change anything, but I know." The trial continued for 3 weeks. Witness after witness painted a picture of systematic criminality. Preston testified about the embezzlement, Constance about the fraud, Agent Coleman about the murder conspiracies, Patricia about Gerald and Bethany's affair, and plot to kill Thomas. The most dramatic moment came when they played Margaret's confession video from the marina. Her admission to killing her sister Helena, to trying to replace me with frozen embryos, to planning Thomas's murder. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as her madness unfolded on screen. Bethany took the stand on the final day against her lawyer's advice. She looked fragile, almost childlike as she spoke. "I don't expect forgiveness," she began. "I don't deserve it. Everything my sister said is true. I burned her. I stole from her. I tried to have her killed. I became the monster our parents raised me to be." The prosecutor pressed, You're claiming your parents are responsible for your crimes. No, I made my choices, but I was 14 when my mother first taught me to forge signatures to steal from Hortense's college fund. 16 when she helped me cover up my pregnancy by defrauding insurance companies. Every crime I committed, I learned at home. That doesn't excuse attempted murder. Nothing excuses that. I'm just trying to explain how someone who once loved her little sister became someone who could plan her death. It was erosion, slow and steady, every day choosing cruelty over kindness, greed over love, until there was nothing left of the person I might have been. Her testimony was compelling but ultimately irrelevant. The evidence was overwhelming. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge, a stern woman who'd seen too much corruption, delivered the sentence. Bethany Morrison, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years to life for conspiracy to commit murder fraud, embezzlement, and theft. You systematically destroyed lives out of greed and spite. Your privileged upbringing is not a defense, but an indictment. You had every advantage and chose to become a predator. Bethany didn't react. She'd known it was coming. As they led her away, she looked back one last time. Take care of yourself, Hortense. Be better than we were. Thomas's trial was shorter. With Gerald testifying against him and Jennifer's evidence tampering exposed but mitigated by his other crimes, he received 12 years. He'd be in his 70s when released. His business empire dissolved, his reputation destroyed. He took the verdict with resignation, finally accepting consequences he'd avoided for decades. Margaret's trial never happened. The psychiatric evaluation found her incompetent to stand trial, her mind finally shattered by the weight of her crimes. She was committed indefinitely to a maximum security psychiatric facility, where she spent her days talking to her dead sister Helena and the frozen embryos that would never become the perfect children she'd envisioned. In rare lucid moments, she wrote letters to me that doctors wouldn't let her send apologies, mixed with accusations in endless loops. Gerald got 15 years after his cooperation was balanced against his crimes. Patricia divorced him and used her settlement to start a foundation helping women escape abusive marriages. We became unlikely friends bonded by survival. As the trials ended and sentences were handed down, Hartford could finally exhale. The Morrison family empire of crime had fallen, its architects imprisoned or institutionalized. The story made national news as an example of how generational wealth could become generational poison. I sat in my new apartment, nothing fancy but clean and mine, reading the final verdict reports. The Morrison Family Foundation for Survivor Support was already helping dozens of people escape their own toxic families. Eleanor's money combined with seized criminal assets had created something beautiful from ashes. Nathan found me there, staring at photos from the trials. "How do you feel?" he asked, settling beside me. Empty. Full. Everything at once. They're gone, really gone. No more schemes, no more threats. Just silence where their chaos used to be. That's freedom. Is it? Sometimes I dream about them. Not nightmares, just dreams where we're a normal family, where they loved me, where Bethany and I were real sisters. I wake up grieving for something that never existed. That's human, grieving the family you deserved but didn't get. My phone buzzed, a call from the psychiatric facility. "Mrs. Morrison, your mother is having a lucid moment and is asking to speak with you. You're under no obligation." "No," I said firmly. "I've said everything I needed to say in court. She has my testimony. That's all she gets." I hung up and blocked the number. Some bridges once burned shouldn't be rebuilt. "Want to get dinner," Nathan suggested. "Somewhere that isn't a crime scene or a courtroom." I smiled, the expression still feeling new after years of suppressing it. "I know just the place." We went to the small Italian restaurant where he'd first slipped me $20 for gas during a family dinner years ago. The owner recognized us beaming as she led us to a quiet corner booth. "I followed the trials," she confided. "That family, they never treated you right. I'm glad you got justice." Justice. Such a clean word for such a messy process. As we ate, I thought about Bethany in her cell, probably planning appeals she'd never win. Thomas, in minimum security, finally forced to face himself without distractions. Margaret, in her padded room, lost in delusions that might be kinder than reality. Gerald counting days until release. All of them trapped by their own choices while I sat free eating pasta with someone who'd seen my worth when I couldn't. "What now?" Nathan asked over tiramisu. "Now I live, run the foundation, help others. Maybe go back to school, finish my degree properly, write about what happened, turn pain into purpose, date the kind man who collected evidence for 7 years just in case I needed it." He blushed at that last part. "So we're dating, aren't we, unless you regularly have dinner with women you've saved from knife-wielding sisters." "You saved yourself. I just documented it." "And stood between me and danger, and believed in me, and waited until I was ready to see you as more than Preston's brother. That's worth a few dinners, don't you think?" We were still learning each other outside crisis mode. He was quieter than I'd expected, thoughtful in ways that complemented my newfound directness. He made me laugh, something I'd almost forgotten how to do. He didn't try to fix me or save me, just walked beside me as I fixed and saved myself. The trials were over, the sentences delivered, the Morrison family crimes cataloged and punished, but my story, our story, was just beginning. I raised my glass of wine, thinking of Eleanor somewhere beyond, probably satisfied that her plans had worked even better than she'd imagined. "To justice," Nathan offered. "To survival," I countered. To both, we agreed, and drank to the future we'd build on the ruins of the past. The burn scar on my arm had faded to silver, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Like all scars, it told a story, not of victimhood, but of resilience, not of what had been done to me, but of what I'd refused to let destroy me. The Morrisons had tried to burn me away. Instead, they'd forged me into someone unbreakable, and that was the greatest justice of all. 1 year later, I stood in Eleanor's garden, my garden now, watching the sunrise paint the Vermont mountains gold. The estate that had been her refuge had become mine, transformed into the flagship location for the Morrison Family Foundation for survivor support. Where once there was solitude, now there was healing. Nathan found me there, 2 cups of coffee in hand, his presence as natural as breathing after all we'd survived together. Today was special. The anniversary of Bethany's failed wedding, the day everything finally collapsed, the day I truly began to be free. "Nervous?" he asked, handing me a mug. "Excited," I corrected. "Today we opened the residential program. 20 survivors of family abuse moving in, starting their own journeys to freedom." The house behind us buzzed with activity, staff making final preparations, volunteers arranging welcome baskets, therapists reviewing files. We'd spent months converting Eleanor's mansion into a healing center, keeping her personal touches while creating space for others to rebuild their lives. "The irony isn't lost on me," I continued. "This house Eleanor left me to escape my family has become a place where dozens will escape theirs." She'd love that, taking something meant for one and multiplying it into hope for many. My phone buzzed with a notification. Bethany had been denied parole for the first time. She'd serve at least another 5 years before her next hearing. The news brought no joy, just a sense of finality. She was where she needed to be, and I was where I needed to be, and those places would never intersect again. "There's something I need to tell you," Nathan said, suddenly serious. "I heard from Preston yesterday. He's engaged again, someone he met in New York. He wanted me to tell you he's genuinely happy and grateful you exposed the truth before he married Bethany. Good for him. Everyone deserves a real chance at love. Do they even after what they've done? I thought about it watching the sun climb higher. Maybe that's the difference between justice and revenge. Justice says pay for your crimes. Revenge says never be happy again. I want justice, not revenge. If Bethany finds peace in prison, if Thomas finds redemption in his cell, if Margaret finds clarity in treatment, I won't begrudge them that. I just won't be part of their journey anymore. A van pulled up the driveway, our first residents arriving. I recognized the look in their eyes, that mixture of hope and terror, freedom and uncertainty that comes with finally escaping. I'd worn that same expression a year ago. Let's go welcome them, I said. The day flew by in a blur of introductions, tour groups, and orientation sessions. 20 people ages 18 to 65 each, with their own story of survival. Parents who'd stolen their identities for credit fraud, siblings who'd sabotaged every opportunity, children who'd endured what no child should endure. All of them taking their first steps toward healing in the house Eleanor had preserved for this purpose. That evening, we held our first group dinner in the dining room where Eleanor had once eaten alone. The conversation was tentative at first, then gradually warmer as people recognized themselves in each other's stories. I sat at the head of the table not as a leader, but as a fellow traveler who'd simply started the journey earlier. I'd like to propose a toast, said Maria, a woman who'd escaped her family's sex trafficking ring. To Eleanor Morrison, who saw the future need, to Hortense, who made it reality, and to all of us who were brave enough to save ourselves. To us, everyone echoed, glasses raised high. After dinner, I found myself in Eleanor's study, now my office, reviewing applications for the next residency cohort. We had hundreds already, each story a testament to how common family abuse was and how desperate people were for escape routes. The foundation could only help a fraction of those who needed it, but it was a start. Nathan knocked and entered with a manila envelope. This came by courier, from Thomas. I stared at the package. We hadn't communicated since the trial. I'd ignored his letters from prison, deleted his emails unread. What could he possibly have to say now? Want me to open it? Nathan offered. No, I'll do it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a smaller envelope marked for Hortense, from Robert Morrison, 1975. Thomas's letter was brief. Hortense, I found this in a safety deposit box I'd forgotten about. It was from my father to you, written when your mother was pregnant. I should have given it to you years ago. I should have done many things differently. I won't ask for forgiveness I haven't earned. I just wanted you to have what was always yours. Thomas? With trembling hands, I opened the second envelope. My grandfather's handwriting, young and hopeful. To my future grandchild, your mother tells me you'll be named Hortense after my grandmother, a woman who survived the Great Depression with grace and grit. I'm writing this before you're born because I want you to have something untouched by whatever comes after. You are loved, you are wanted, you are already precious to me, and we haven't even met. I dream of teaching you to fish, to read the stars, to find your way in the world with confidence and joy. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. But know that in this moment, months before your birth, you are already the light of my life. Your sister Bethany is wonderful, but my heart tells me you'll be the one who carries our family's best qualities forward. Be strong, little one. Be kind. Be yourself always, no matter who tries to tell you different. All my love, Grandfather Robert. The tears came then, 25 years of grief for relationships stolen before they could bloom. Nathan held me as I sobbed, mourning not just my grandfather, but the family that could have been if love had won over greed. When the storm passed, I carefully placed the letter in Eleanor's desk drawer next to her own final message. Two grandparents who'd love me, bookending a life that had tried so hard to be unloved. He knew, I whispered. Even before I was born, he knew I'd need those words someday. But maybe that's the real inheritance, Nathan suggested. Not the money or the houses or even the justice, but the knowledge that you were always worthy of love even when surrounded by those who couldn't give it. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sarah, one of our new residents, stood nervously in the doorway. I'm sorry to bother you, but my little brother just called. He's 17, still stuck at home. Is there any way? We have emergency protocols for minors, I assured her. Let me get our legal team on the phone. We'll help him tonight. As I made the calls that would save another life, I thought about cycles and chains and choosing differently. Margaret had killed her sister and spent a lifetime poisoning her daughters with the guilt. Bethany had learned to be cruel to survive cruelty. Thomas had enabled it all rather than risk discomfort. But I'd broken the chain, refused to pass on the poison, used my pain as fuel for compassion rather than justification for cruelty. And here in Eleanor's house, 20 more chains were breaking, 20 more cycles ending, 20 more people choosing differently. I have something to ask you, Nathan said as we finally prepared for bed in the small apartment we'd kept for ourselves on the property. But I want to be clear, this isn't about timing or tradition or anything except truth. He pulled out a simple silver ring. Hortense Morrison, you've already survived hell and built heaven from its ashes. You don't need anyone to complete you or save you. But if you'd let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life walking beside you as you save others. Will you marry me? I looked at the ring. Not a diamond worth stealing, just silver polished bright. I thought of all the marriages I'd witnessed, Margaret and Thomas's toxic codependence, Gerald and Patricia's betrayal, Bethany and Preston's built on lies, even Eleanor's distant and proper until death. Then I thought of Nathan documenting truth for 7 years, standing between me and a knife, sitting through every day of testimony, building this foundation beside me, loving me not despite my scars, but because of how I'd earned them. Yes, I said simply, but on one condition. Anything. We get married here in the garden with our residents as witnesses. Let them see that real love is possible after trauma, that choosing differently can lead to joy, not just survival. Perfect, he agreed, slipping the ring onto my finger where it caught the moonlight like a promise. That night, I dreamed not of trials or traumas, but of gardens growing. Eleanor planting seeds she'd never see bloom. My grandfather writing letters to an unborn grandchild. 20 survivors finding their voices around a dinner table. Nathan keeping 7 years of evidence just in case. All of us choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, healing over hiding. I woke to sunlight and purpose and a man who'd waited patiently for me to be ready to be loved. Outside my window, survivors tended Eleanor's garden, planting new flowers among the old perennials. The metaphor was almost too perfect, but I'd learned to appreciate beauty where I found it. My phone showed missed calls from the psychiatric facility. Margaret was asking for me again. I deleted them without listening. Some doors once closed needed to stay that way. Instead, I opened my laptop and began writing. Dear future resident, if you're reading this, you've taken the first step toward freedom. It's terrifying, I know. Leaving abuse often feels harder than enduring it. But you're here, and that means you've already chosen to save yourself. This house belonged to my grandmother Eleanor, who loved me from afar when loving me up close was forbidden. She left it to me so I could escape. Now I share it with you for the same purpose. Within these walls, you'll find safety therapy, legal aid, and most importantly, people who understand. Your family may have tried to convince you that you're worthless, crazy, unlovable, or deserving of abuse. They lied. You are valuable, sane, worthy of love, and deserving of kindness. It may take time to believe this. It took me 25 years, but truth is patient. It will wait for you to be ready. Some days will be harder than others. Healing isn't linear. You might grieve the family you should have had, rage at the injustice you survived, or feel guilty for saving yourself when others couldn't. All of this is normal. All of this is survivable. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to do next. Welcome home. Hortense, Morrison survivor advocate, and your first friend here. I printed the letter and placed it in the welcome packet we'd prepared for next month's residents. 30 more people ready to break their chains. 30 more cycles ending. 30 more futures beginning. The burned scar on my arm had faded to almost nothing visible only when the light hit just right. Sometimes I forgot it was there until a survivor asked about it, recognizing a fellow traveler by their marks. Then I'd tell the story, not with bitterness, but with perspective. Yes, my sister burned me. Yes, my parents laughed. But look what grew from those ashes: a foundation, a purpose, a life worth living. Bethany had been wrong that day at the wedding. I hadn't gotten everything I wanted: a loving family, a normal childhood, parents who chose me. But I'd gotten something infinitely more valuable: the chance to transform pain into purpose, to help others escape what I'd endured, to build a family I'd never had from survivors who understood. As the sun climbed higher over the Vermont mountains, painting Eleanor's garden in shades of gold and green, I touched the silver ring on my finger and smiled. The girl who'd once been called trash, who'd been burned and blamed and told she shouldn't exist, had become something her family never expected. Not their victim, not their echo, not their cautionary tale, but her own woman writing her own story, choosing love over fear every single day. And that was the greatest revenge of all, not destroying them, but refusing to let them destroy me, building something beautiful where they'd planted pain, choosing to heal rather than repeat their harm. The Morrison family legacy of abuse and greed had ended. The Hortense Morrison legacy of survival and service had just begun. What about you? Have you ever had to find the strength to break free from those who should have protected you? Sometimes the hardest chains to break are the ones disguised as love. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found meaning in Hortense's journey from victim to survivor to thriver, please consider liking this video and subscribing to hear more stories of triumph over adversity. Share it with someone who might need to hear that escape is possible, that healing can happen, that they deserve better than what they've been given. Thank you for witnessing Hortense's truth with an open heart. May you find the courage to write your own story of freedom, whatever that looks like for you. Remember, you are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to do next. Until next time, choose healing, choose hope, choose yourself.